The GPS showed 11:47 p.m. when I pulled up to 1247 Maple Street. I should have trusted my gut right then and there. The house sat back from the road, swallowed by overgrown hedges that hadn't seen a trimmer in years. Every other house on that block had porch lights on except that one. It was crouched in sinister darkness. I grabbed the massive order from my basket. 6 large pizzas, breadsticks, wings, the works. The kind of order that made my rent money, so I couldn't afford to be picky about the time or the neighborhood. Just as I got out of my car, my phone buzzed with an updated delivery instruction. Use the side door, knock 3 times. That should have been red flag number 2.
He'd better give me a hefty tip.
The side door was tucked between 2 dying shrubs, barely visible from the street. I knocked 3 times like I was asked, shifting the pizza bags in my arm. The weight was making my shoulders ache, but it was my last delivery of the day. The door swung open immediately, like he'd been standing right behind it, counting seconds. "You're late," he grumbled, wide eyes raking every inch of my body. The guy was maybe 50, of average height and wearing a faded gray t-shirt that had seen better days. His hair was thinning on top but long in the back, like he couldn't decide which decade he belonged in.
Sorry, traffic was crazy.
I lied.
That'll be $147.83.
"Come inside." He stepped back, gesturing into the dark hallway behind him. "I need help carrying this."
I can't really come inside. The company policy...
"I'm disabled. I can't carry it all myself. If you can't come in, you better take it back." His face changed, just slightly, but I caught it. The eyes narrowed, and the lips twitched. I looked at him standing there. Neither a cane nor a wheelchair was in sight. His disability was either invisible or non-existent, but I couldn't definitely take the order back.
Okay. Just to the kitchen.
I said. Maybe there were people with invisible disabilities. Maybe I was being paranoid. But even in my overworked, delirious state, I knew I was lying to myself. The hallway smelled all wrong, not with the stench of rotten food or cleaning products or even mustiness. It was some repugnant chemical, so strong it made my nose burn and my head spin. I followed him deeper into the house, past a living room where all the furniture faced the wrong direction, away from the TV and toward the hallway we just walked through. "Kitchen's this way," he said, but he was leading me toward a door at the end of the hall. "Down here."
Down?
I stopped walking.
The kitchen's in the basement?
"That's where my guests are waiting." His voice had gotten softer, almost gentle. "They're hungry." Every instinct I had screamed. The house was dead quiet, except for our footsteps. I couldn't hear any sounds of guests, conversation, or TV.
You know what? I'll just leave these here on the counter.
I said, setting the bags down on a small table in the hallway.
Your guests can come up and get them.
"No," he barked. "They can't come up. They're all old men." He moved between me and the front door, casually, like he was just adjusting his position, but now I'd have to go through him to get out. "My guests don't like waiting," he continued. "Especially not the new ones. They get cranky when they're hungry." My mouth went dry.
Sir, I'm afraid I'm in a bit of a hurry. Got more deliveries and...
"No, you don't." He grinned sickly, making my supper churn in my stomach. "I checked your app. This was your last delivery of the night." He wasn't supposed to know that. I could feel cold sweat glisten on my palms as he took a bold step closer. "The basement's real cozy, soundproof, and warm lights. All my guests loved it down there. Nobody ever wants to leave." I fumbled for my phone, hitting the call button for the first contact I could reach. It went to Maddie, my best friend's voicemail.
Hey!
I said it loudly anyway.
Yeah, I'm at 1247 Maple Street. Yeah, that one. Can you come help me with this drop-off? The customer has a really big order and needs help getting it downstairs.
The man's face went white. His eyes darted toward the front door, then back to me.
There's a lot of food here.
I continued into the phone.
Yeah, I'm in the side door. Just come around the back. You'll see it right there.
"Hang up," he said quietly.
What? Oh, okay, Jake. Yeah, just hurry. I want to get home fast.
I ended the call and looked at him.
My coworker's wet out. It should just be a minute.
For a moment, white spots danced in my vision as I watched his eyes twitch darkly. I used the distraction to hurriedly walk past him, trying not to run and keeping my breathing steady. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the door handle.
"We're waiting for the girl! What's taking so long?"
A sleazy voice boomed behind me. There were more footsteps.
"She had company. I had to let her go,"
he snapped. I made it to my car, threw it in reverse, and backed out of the driveway faster than I'd ever moved in my life. In my rearview mirror, as I drove away, I caught a glimpse of his garage. The door was partially open, and I could see plastic sheeting hanging from the ceiling and coiled rope on a workbench. My hands were still shaking when I called 911. The police reached the house, made a thorough investigation. The basement was soundproofed. There were zip ties, jars of chloroform stacked in the corner. They even found metal rings bolted into the walls and a handwritten sign that read "Guests" in neat block letters. It looked like a dark web torture room. The cops also found 3 driver's licenses in the kitchen drawer, all young women about 20 who'd gone missing over the past 2 years after their late-night deliveries. I keep thinking about that room, the plastic sheeting, and how he knew it was my last delivery. But mostly, I think about his smile when he said his guests never want to leave, because now I understand what he meant. Dating beyond 30 is strange. You're too old for the seduction games, yet too young to quit. That's when I tried a local dating app recommended by a friend of mine. I matched with a 29-year-old girl named Claire. She was a brunette with big green eyes and a charming smile. We met at this charming, small cocktail bar down the block. At first, I assumed it would be awkward, like every previous date I'd been on. But Claire, well, let's just say she seemed different. When I got in, she was already waiting for me at the table, dressed in this cute red skirt paired with a white tank top. She smiled, and I smiled back. We hit it off instantly. She was smart and witty and made good jokes instead of boring small talk. And she listened. What more can a man ask for, right? After a couple of drinks, I asked if she wanted to return to my apartment. She did not hesitate. I live alone in a decent flat on the top floor with an open layout. When we entered, she complimented the artwork, lighting, and even my playlist. But then she glanced at my bookshelves, which were mostly empty other than a handful of books.
You don't collect Labubu?
The what?
Labubu. The designer toys? You've never seen them?
She got out her phone and showed me her wallpaper. It was of a wide-eyed, sharp-toothed small creature that resembled a hybrid between a rabbit and a goblin. She then started scrolling her album and showed me photo after photo of glass cases loaded with toys. There were of various colors, sizes, and expressions. Some were smiling while others were snarling.
I have over 70, and each one is unique.
I tried not to laugh. Unique? And these things? Honestly, they resemble devil rabbits. Probably the creepiest toys I've ever seen. Suddenly, her smile faded, her eyebrows furrowed, as if I had deeply offended her.
They're gorgeous. Simply don't get it.
I shrugged and thought the best way to diffuse the situation would be to play cool. Okay, sure. To each their own. She stared at me for a second, and I could sense something had changed in her. She was no more the person she was last hour.
How can you not like them?
She inquired, as if she was giving me a second chance to rethink. I chuckled. Honestly, if I ever saw one of those in my house, I'd probably burn it. That was the exact moment when everything went awry. Her expression went blank, her pupils dilated, making her eyes scarier. She stood up slowly and walked to my kitchen counter without saying anything. I watched her pick up the sharp knife that I had left out while cutting limes earlier. I laughed nervously. Okay, are you doing something right now? 'Cause she shushed me, putting the knife on her lips.
I brought you one.
She whispered. What? She dug into her large tote bag and took out a miniature Labubu figure, jet black with scarlet eyes. She placed it on the counter, close to the knife.
I wanted him to meet you.
I felt my chest tightening. Okay, Claire, enough of your jokes. Put the knife down. She did not move. Her eyes twitched like she was trying too hard to control herself. Then, in a low, shaking voice, she spoke.
He heard what you said. You should apologize.
I backed up, totally furious now. I'm not apologizing to some crappy toy. Just Miss Psycho is obsessed with it. My phone was on the couch about 10 feet away. I tried to remain cool. Look, it's late. You should probably leave. She suddenly lunged. I was ready to dodge, but she sliced my arm open and then started screaming about how I should apologize to her Labubu. I lurched backward, nearly tripping over the coffee table. I grabbed my phone and locked myself in the bathroom. I stood against the door while she kept kicking and banging on it like some maniac. I dialed 911. My hands were shaking. I informed them that a woman I had brought home was having a breakdown and that I was concerned for my safety. She stopped banging after about a minute, but I did not open the door. I pushed my ear against the wood and listened. I heard whispers. Her voice indicated that she was speaking to someone. She had stopped yelling or screaming, just whispering. It was terrible. 10 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. As they got in, I opened the bathroom door just enough and pointed them at Claire, who was now sitting on the couch, clutching the Labubu to her chest like it was her forever treasure. The officers warned her, and then one of them cuffed her. She was bleeding from her hands from thumping on the washroom door too hard. There was cotton everywhere on the couch as she angrily stabbed the pillows. When the cops were taking her away, she kept yelling,
How could anyone hate Labubu?
Her voice echoed in the corridor, louder than it should have been. I came out of the washroom and watched her leave. She did not look at me once. It was 3 weeks ago. The cops later informed me that Claire had no criminal record. She is clean. But she was a member of online forums with obsessive fan clubs that treated these toys like living entities. They believed she needed psychiatric evaluation. Claire said, in her defense, that the Labubu line became her new purpose. They told me I could press charges against her, but I didn't. I knew they would send her to some mental institution anyway, so what's the point in making things harder for her? After all, she is sick, because any obsession that erases your sense of reasoning is a medical problem. I haven't heard from her since. I just hope she gets all the help she needs. And to all the Labubu fans out there, you guys better stay away from me. I'm not proud of how lonely I got after my breakup. I'm 40 and work in tech. Let's just say I don't exactly light up a room. After the end of a 5-year relationship, I hit a pretty low place. That's when I downloaded Tinder. I used Tinder as a temporary distraction from serious relationships. And one day, I met Darla. She was 35 with red hair, kind eyes, and a smile that somehow made me feel seen. A little quirky, sure. She said she lived in an old farmhouse on the outskirts of town and cared for her paralyzed grandfather. She was funny, honest, and actually seemed interested. After a couple of casual dates, she invited me to stay over at her place. She said it would be nice to cook me something homemade, and she didn't like leaving her grandpa alone at night. I hesitated for a second, thinking how fast it was moving, but I was craving connection, so I agreed. The farmhouse was far into the woods. It looked old but cozy, surrounded by a rustic charm. She greeted me with a kiss and a warm smile, then showed me around. The living room was full of antiques. The kitchen smelled like herbs and raw meat. She said she was making stew, her grandfather's favorite. That's when I first noticed something strange. Big chunks of raw meat sitting out on the counter. No fridge, no ice. I asked if she was going to put them away.
Nah, the doctor prescribed it that way. Grandpa's on a full meat diet, you know?
As night came, the farmhouse grew eerily quiet. We sat on the couch and talked, but my eyes kept drifting to the hallway, to Grandpa's door. She said he was paralyzed, couldn't speak, and hadn't left his bed in years. But I never once heard him. No creaks, no coughs, nothing. At around 11, she got up, saying she needed to change her grandpa into sleeping clothes and give him his medicines. After she left, I started to feel bored, so I wandered around the house. I walked over to the basement door. Out of curiosity, I opened the door and a wave of reeking odor hit me in the face. It smelled like something died down there. I grabbed my phone for light and started down the wooden stairs. As I descended, my knees started trembling. There were jars, dozens of them, filled with what looked like human parts. Fingers, eyeballs, and pieces of flesh floating in cloudy red fluid. There were crates stacked with bones. Some still had blood and skin on them. And hanging from the ceiling on rusted meat hooks were human torsos, cut open, ribs exposed. One still had a wedding ring on. I threw up right there. What the hell? Suddenly, I heard a sound upstairs. The bathroom door swung shut. I rushed up the stairs, locked the basement door again, and returned to the couch just in time. Darla smiled at me.
Everything okay?
I forced a grin. Yeah, just stretching my legs. My brain was screaming. I needed to get out, fast. But I noticed a deadbolt on the front door, and there was no key in sight. I didn't want to raise suspicion, so I told her I was worn out and asked if I could lie down. She agreed and led me down the hallway, right past her grandfather's room. The door of the room was open, and I saw this small window near the bed. The window was just large enough for me to climb through, which was likely my only escape route. She pointed me at the guest room across the hall.
I'll be back in a minute with blankets. Just make yourself at home.
As soon as she left, I tiptoed into Grandpa's room. It was pitch black. I used my phone again, low brightness. He was lying in bed. His face was hidden behind a curtain hanging from the ceiling, like in hospitals. There were stacked up plates under his bed with flies buzzing on them. My blood curled, thinking I was in the same room with the cannibal. I kept my eyes on him and moved toward the window. It was old and stiff, but I managed to slide it open inch by inch without making much noise. I was almost done when I heard slow, raspy breathing coming from the bed. I froze. I looked back, and without warning, the man's head turned. It snapped to the side like a doll. His eyes opened wide, and I swear on my life, he smiled. Not a soft smile, a grotesque, crooked grin that stretched too far. His teeth were sharp and filthy, like they'd grown past what was human. I panicked and climbed out the window, scraping my arm on the way down. I didn't stop to look back. I just ran through the woods until I hit the main road. I hitchhiked to a gas station, from where I called the cops. They went back to the house that night. Here's the part I still don't understand. When they got there, the house was empty. Darla, Grandpa, and the horror in that basement were all gone. They said the place hadn't been lived in for years. They showed me property records. The last listed owner was a man named Roy Miller, a butcher. He had been paralyzed after a farm accident in the late 90s. He died in 2003. And Darla? There was no record of anyone with that name connected to the property. No license, no social, nothing. I check the news every week for stories about missing men, and I can't use dating apps anymore. But sometimes, at night, I'll dream about that house. And in the dream, I'm back in that room, staring into those wide, dead eyes of that old cannibal as the broken grin slowly stretches across his face. The neon sign reading Sunset Motel flickered like a dying heartbeat. I sat in my dead Honda, staring at the place that looked like every horror movie's opening scene. But at 2 a.m. on a deserted highway with my phone at 3% battery, this dump was my only option. The desk clerk barely looked up when I paid cash. His eyes were bloodshot, and he smelled like stale cigarettes. The room was exactly what I expected. Brown carpet that squelched under my feet, a bedspread that probably hadn't been washed for years, and walls thin enough that I could hear every movement from neighboring rooms. But I was exhausted. The bed would have to do for a few hours until the tow truck could come at dawn. I'd just kicked off my shoes when somebody knocked on my door like they were in grave danger. I looked through the peephole and saw a teenage girl, maybe 17, with mascara streaked down her cheeks and blonde hair matted against her head. She was shivering in a tank top and shorts, arms wrapped around herself. When she looked up at the door, her eyes were wide with panic.
Please, can I use your phone? My boyfriend, he just dumped me and took off with my stuff. I need to call my friend.
Every instinct I had screamed at me in a big no, but looking at her through the peephole, seeing how young she was, how scared, I couldn't just leave her out there. I cracked the door open, chain still attached.
Are you okay? Please, I just need to make one phone call. I promise I'm not crazy or anything. Jake, my boyfriend, we had a huge fight and...
She held up empty hands.
My friend Sarah lives nearby. She'll come get me.
Against every horror movie rule I'd ever learned, I opened the door. She practically fell inside, still shaking. Up close, I could see she was even younger than I'd thought. There was a small bruise forming on her left cheek.
Thank you so much.
She took my phone with trembling hands.
I'm Megan, by the way. I'm so sorry about this.
She dialed quickly, like she knew the number by heart. While it rang, she looked around the room. Her eyes lingered on my luggage longer.
Sarah? Yeah, I'm at that motel. The Sunset one? Off Highway 76. Room 237. Yeah, a lady. No, she's cool. Real nice, actually. Blonde, probably late 20s. Traveling alone.
My blood went cold. That wasn't how you describe someone to a friend picking you up. That was how you describe someone to...
She can't. I saw her car outside. It's broken down.
Megan's eyes met mine, and I saw something that made my skin crawl. She wasn't scared anymore. She was calculating. I reached for my phone, but she stepped back, still holding it.
10 minutes? Perfect.
She nodded at whatever Sarah was saying. I backed away slowly, trying not to show my panic.
I think you should leave now.
Megan smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. Sweet and innocent on the surface, but her eyes were dead.
You know what's funny about people like you?
She said, still holding my phone.
You're so desperate to be good, to help. It makes this so much easier.
She walked to the window, peering out at the parking lot.
Sarah's bringing friends. They're really excited to meet you.
I bolted for the door, but she was faster than she looked. Megan grabbed my arm, nails digging in deep enough to draw blood.
Where are you going? They'll be here soon. You wouldn't want to be rude, would you?
I yanked free and made it to the door, fumbling with the locks. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely work them. I heard the sliding glass door open behind me.
Right on time.
Megan giggled. Heavy footsteps echoed on the balcony. There were male voices, low and sinister. I finally opened the door and ran into the hallway, screaming for help. The motel was silent and dark everywhere. Where was everyone? Where was the desk clerk? I heard them behind me, at least 2 men, maybe more. Their footsteps echoed off the concrete. I ran toward the front office, but the lights were off. I ran blindly and entered one of the ground floor rooms. I slammed the door shut and hurried toward the bathroom window. Behind me, I could hear something heavy hit the main door. The window was small and high, but I'm not a big person. I could fit. The glass cut my arms as I squeezed through the window. I could hear them breaking down the bathroom door as I dropped into the bushes behind the motel. My phone was still in there with Megan, but there was a gas station about half a mile down the road. If I could just... Lisa! I froze. One of the men knew my name. How did he know my name? Lisa, we just want to talk. Megan says you're being unreasonable. I ran, stumbled through the desert scrub, cutting my legs on thorns, not caring about anything except getting away from that voice. It followed me for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The gas station was closed, but the payphone worked. The police found me there bleeding and babbling about a teenage girl and traffickers. They arrested 3 men and Megan, whose real name was Jessica and who was 19, not 17. She'd been working with them for 2 years, targeting solo female travelers for her clients. The motel clerk was her cousin. I found out later that room 237 was their favorite. Good sight lines to the parking lot, balcony access, no bathroom window to help you escape. Now, 3 months later, I still can't sleep in hotels. I can't trust anyone who looks too young, scared, or perfect. Sometimes, the person who needs help the most is actually the last person you should ever let inside. I've been working in McDonald's for almost a year now. The job isn't anything to boast about, but since it covers my car insurance and rent, I keep doing it. The place is usually dead after 11 p.m. Most nights, it's just me, the fry station, and the occasional late-night customers. I can't say every night goes the same because the memory of that one night still haunts me in my dreams. It was a mundane Tuesday, and I was sitting alone at the counter watching the rain, accompanied by flashes of lightning. It had been almost 2 hours, and no customers walked in. But the company policy compelled me to stay open, instead of locking up and going home. The hum of the fryer and the dull thud of rain against the roof were the only sounds traveling inside the restaurant. I was casually loitering behind the counter when the entrance door jingled. It startled me not because of the sound, but because I hadn't heard a car pull up. I turned around and saw an old woman standing in the entrance. She wore a thick, moth-bitten coat, even though it was warm inside. Her face was caked with clown-like makeup, white foundation, exaggerated red lipstick, and faded blue eyeshadow smeared on her eyelids. She had vibrant red nails, which were so long that they kind of creeped me out. She held an oversized Stanley Cup in both hands, covered in chipped glitter and scratches.
Are you open?
We are indeed. She smiled at me, and I immediately felt cold. Her coffee-stained yellow teeth flashing from the red lips made it difficult to look at her face for more than 3 seconds. It was one of those too wide, too forced smiles, the kind that make you feel like something was deeply wrong, even if you couldn't explain why. She walked up to the counter and said in this squeaky voice,
Just the small fries, dear.
I rang her up. She paid in exact change, each coin placed slowly into my palm. Then she shuffled to the farthest corner booth, clutching her Stanley Cup. Customers are weird sometimes. That comes with the job, so I didn't think much. I dropped the fries in the oil and watched her sitting at the corner table. She didn't move much, just sipped from her cup, slowly, carefully, like she was savoring each gulp. But soon, I started noticing something weird. Every time she took a sip, red liquid trickled down her chin. At first, I thought it was ketchup, but she wasn't eating yet. And then, I saw her tongue. She darted it out, licked the red line, and smiled to herself like it tasted sweet. I don't know why, but the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I went to the back, pretending to check the stockroom. My heart was racing for no reason I could explain. It's not like she was doing anything illegal, but something about the way she sipped and the way she looked made my stomach twist, and I was very suspicious about the content of her cup. I quietly called 911. I told them I wasn't sure what was going on, but there was an older woman behaving strangely. I said she had blood on her chin. I didn't know what else to say without sounding paranoid. 15 minutes later, 2 officers pulled into the lot. The rain was still coming down hard. I unlocked the door to let them in and pointed toward the booth. She was still there, sipping and smiling like a crazy person. The young officer approached her gently, crouching a little so he wasn't towering over her. "Ma'am, can we take a quick look at your cup?" She tightened her grip immediately.
It's mine. I need it. I'm still drinking.
The older officer stepped in. "We understand. We just want to make sure everything's okay. Please?" It took a full minute, but eventually they convinced her to hand it over. Her hands were shaking. She looked like she was about to cry. As soon as they took the lid off, the younger cop reeled back. My body went into shock mode as I found out what was inside. There were severed human fingers floating inside the cup. It looked bloated and probably belonged to a man. The water in the cup turned red, and blood was dripping from the fingers. The woman first stared at the cup and then turned her gaze toward me. She knew I was the one who called the cops. A cruel smile appeared on her face.
I cleaned them for him. He touched her with those fingers. I had to make it right.
The officers quickly placed her under custody. She didn't resist. She just kept mumbling to herself.
He said he was sorry, but it was too late.
Later that night, after the scene cleared, one of the officers came back to grab the security footage. I asked him if she was mentally ill or something. He gave me a grim update. Her name's Eleanor Kessler. We found her husband dead at their house. Eleanor butchered him for cheating on her with his secretary. That cup she brought in? That was his anniversary gift to her. The cup is custom made, engraved, and has a capacity of nearly 40 ounces. He paused. According to her, it holds more than we could imagine. That was the last thing he said before he left. I didn't finish my shift. My manager came in early to relieve me. I didn't go to work the next 2 days. I kept thinking about the red line on her chin, the way she licked it with that sick, satisfied look in her eyes, the way she clutched that Stanley Cup like it was more important than her life. It's been 3 weeks now. I still work at the same McDonald's, but I can't walk past that corner booth without glancing twice. Some nights, I'll think I see her there, just for a second, sitting with her coat zipped up to her chin, watching me. I've worked the closing shift at Burger King for almost a year now. Most nights are the same. A few late-night drive-thru customers and a quiet dining area. But last Tuesday wasn't like the others. I was alone in the front, mopping the floor near the soda machines. All I could hear was the hum of the freezers and the occasional thunder outside. I was hoping to leave early when the doorbell jingled. I looked behind, assuming it was someone trying to sneak in last minute for a Whopper. But it wasn't the usual drunk adults. A little boy, maybe 6 or 7, barefooted and completely drenched in the rain, was standing next to the entrance. He wore a torn white shirt with muddy stains. His face was down and rainwater was dripping from his disbelieved hair. I could barely see his face. "Hey, kiddo, you need something?" He didn't respond, just slowly raised his hand and pulled out a skipping rope from the back of his shirt. He took a few steps in and started hopping from chair to chair, slowly. He started humming this eerie tune. I can't even describe it. Like a nursery rhyme being played backwards on a toy piano. Soon, a spooky sensation began to permeate my body. Who is this kid? Why is he out so late? That too in such weather. He was totally unbothered by my presence, continuing to hop and hum. "Hey, kid?" I called out, trying to keep my voice calm. "Are you all right?" Suddenly, a bolt of lightning flashed nearby, and the electricity cut out. The restaurant sank into darkness, and the only source of light was the street lamp close by. I was shocked when I realized how come the street light's working yet the restaurant's lost power. When I looked back, the kid was gone. I thought he must have left, so I turned on my phone's flashlight to take a quick look at the electric panel inside the storeroom. But just as I flashed the light on the floor beneath me, I saw bloody footprints leading from the corner where I last saw the kid to the kitchen. My heartbeat got rapid. How was this possible? The kid walked past me and I didn't see him. A suspicion grew in my mind as I began following the footsteps. Once I stepped into the kitchen, I saw the kid again. He was standing near the back door, watching the rain with his back facing me. "Hey, where are your parents? Do you want me to— Why did you let me die?" My jaw dropped hearing his question. Let you die? You let me die. You didn't save me, and you could have. He kept talking without looking back at me, and it made no sense. I've never seen this kid in my life. I don't know why he's here and what he wants. And above it all, he's saying he's dead. I realized this kid must be sick or not well mentally. I started walking closer to him, saying, "Look, kid, I'm gonna call the cops for you and they'll take you to your parents. Can you tell me where you live?" Just as I took small steps toward him, my eyes suddenly darted at the floor under his feet, and I noticed drops of blood. Blood was dripping on the floor, and it was dripping from the kid's body. Slowly, the dripping grew denser and faster. The entire floor went red with blood in seconds. I stopped and watched the kid shake, making bone-chilling cracking noises. His head twitched like he was having some kind of reset. Fear engulfed me, and I started backing away. Something at the back of my mind whispered into my ears that it might not be a good idea to get near him. The kid, still facing his back at me and dripping blood on the floor, said one last time,
You shouldn't have let me die.
I wanted to scream back, saying I never knew him. He might have been mistaking me for someone else when he turned around. First, I noticed his face. His eyes were huge and exuding a black liquid. The skin on his face was filled with blue veins that might pop at any minute. And then I saw his torso. His stomach was sliced open with his entrails hanging out. Now I understood why he bled so much. He raised his one arm towards me and started taking smaller, robotic steps, repeating the same words. I was dumbfounded with the entire scenario unfolding in front of my eyes. I was so stunned that I forgot to run. As the kid kept getting closer to me, his entrails started falling out. The squishy sound numbed my ears. A stench of blood, sweat, and something burning made the air unbreathable. First, his intestines fell out. Then, one by one, his internal organs. It was like witnessing a horror movie happening in real life. He broke down on the floor, yet kept crawling towards me, raising his arms like he wanted to get a hold of me anyhow. And when he was just inches away, his bloody little finger touched my feet. It was the coldest touch I've ever felt in my life. I couldn't keep my body steady anymore. I let out a blood-curdling scream and fainted. I woke up in the hospital 2 days later with nausea and a high fever. The Burger King manager came to see me. I told him everything I saw and felt. His face darkened with sorrow. He revealed a lesser-known tragedy, reassuring me what I saw could be real. He said years back a kid went missing from a birthday party at our Burger King restaurant, suspected of being kidnapped. His mutilated body was found in a ditch, and the kid's parents left no stones unturned. During interrogation, a cashier told the cops about a tall, lanky man following the kid, but he ignored the guy, fearing he'd offend a valuable customer. That was the moment the kid's question made sense to me. He blames us for his death, and honestly, the Burger King employee did let him die. I didn't quit my job. Instead, I changed my shifts. Now we keep a photo of the kid in the restaurant, hoping one day someone comes forward with information about his murderer. My name is Linda. I'm 25 years old and I work the night security shift at Glenglow Amusement Park. It's an old, nearly forgotten park at the edge of a forest, just outside town. Most nights are quiet, a little too quiet. When the rides are closed and the lights are turned off, all I can hear is creaking metal, accompanied by rustling wind. But every now and then, I believe I hear the carousel music start up by itself. It doesn't last long, yet it sends shivers down my spine. I've had weird nights before, sure. Drunk teenagers sneaking in, raccoons setting off motion sensors, and even a homeless guy once slept inside the house of mirrors. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what happened last Tuesday. It was around 2:15 a.m. I was on my second round. I had a flashlight, a walkie, and my phone. The air felt colder than usual, and there was a strange coppery smell, like rust. I tried to ignore it. I passed the empty food court, the arcade building, and the spinning teacups. Everything was dead silent, like usual. But when I reached the haunted house ride, I saw someone crouching in the dark. In the shadows by the mechanical shed, someone was close to the side of the ride. I thought it was the older night watchman, Derek. He's the only other human in that park besides me. But as I took a few steps closer, I realized I didn't know this man. He was crouched down, doing something. I heard a soft groaning, not from a man, but from the ground beneath him. It sounded like someone was in pain. I called out.
Hello? Who's there?
The man didn't answer. He stayed crouched, like an animal over its prey. My hand tightened around my flashlight as I approached slowly. Suddenly, I stepped on a twig and made a loud crack. The man turned around. I stopped. His face. God, his face. It was pale and stretched. He had this sick grin with too many teeth to count. His eyes were black pits and pale white eyeballs. He reminded me of the character Babadook. Once he saw me, he stood up and tilted his head sharply, like a crow eyeing something already dead. He didn't say a word. He just looked at the sky, then back to the ground behind him, and sprinted straight into the thick bushes beside the ride. I stood there, covered in sweat and dread, not knowing what to do next. My instincts screamed at me to run the other way, but I couldn't. I had to know what or who he was crouched over. So I took a step forward. I could see a trail of blood flowing along the ground. As I got closer, I found Derek lying on his side, shaking, eyes half open. His lips were gone, just cut off, leaving behind a mess of bloody gums and exposed teeth. His face was wet with blood. I could see deep slashes across his chest, arms, and even fingers, like someone had taken a scalpel to his skin, cutting him just enough to make him bleed everywhere but not die instantly. I dropped to my knees.
Oh my god! Derek?
He couldn't talk, just wheezed, trembled, and stared at me with eyes full of panic. I fumbled for my phone and called the cops with shaking hands. My voice cracked as I told them everything I saw. Then I held Derek's hand and whispered,
You'll be okay. Just stay with me. Help is coming.
My eyes wandered to every dark corner of the park as I sat beside him. I didn't want to leave him alone, even for a second. Every sound made me flinch. The rustling trees, the creaking rides, the wind whistling through the gates. I kept thinking he was going to come back, and how would I protect myself and wounded Derek if he did? But fortunately, he didn't. The cops arrived within 10 minutes. I waved them down with my flashlight. When they saw Derek, they called for medics immediately. 3 officers stayed behind to investigate the park. They split up, flashlights in hand, moving fast but cautiously. I couldn't hear much from their radios, but I did hear one thing. They found him. The man was hiding in the park's underground maintenance tunnels, a series of old access halls running beneath the rides. Most of us never went down there. He was curled up near a pile of blankets and old candy wrappers, surrounded by stolen park food, children's toys, and worse, what looked like blood-stained tools and bits of hair. The police cuffed him, but he had no fear in his eyes. Instead, he began narrating a creepy children's rhyme like a psychotic person.
Tiptoe Tim with his hollow eyes creeps at night when the robin cries. One by one he counts your toes, whispers secrets no one knows. Hide your dolls and lock the door. He drags his feet across the floor. Smile too wide and skin so thin. Don't let little Tim come in.
One officer later told me he was a missing patient from a mental asylum 3 towns away. He'd escaped 2 weeks earlier. Somehow he'd slipped into the park unnoticed, using the tunnels to move around. No one knew he was there. He must have been watching us for days. The scariest part? He could have done to me what he did to Derek. If I had arrived just a few minutes earlier, or if I'd gotten too close too fast, maybe he would have slashed my face open as well. Derek survived, barely. He spent a week in the hospital and needed reconstructive surgery. I quit that job 2 days later. Now I work at a retail store during daylight hours. No more night shifts, no more empty parks, and if I ever hear carousel music again, I walk the other way. This happened about 4 months ago, and even now, I still double-check every window before going to bed. It started with a Tinder match. His name was Liam. He was a photographer, the artsy kind. His profile was filled with striking black and white portraits, mostly people, but the way he captured emotion in their eyes, it was impressive. He was a smooth talker, and our conversations were engaging. It wasn't pushy like some of the other guys I'd met on Tinder before, so when he invited me for dinner at his place, I said yes. He was excited to show me some of his unpublished work. Honestly, I was flattered. I'd been through a bad breakup recently, and the attention felt nice. It was a Saturday night. Liam's apartment was in a quiet building just outside the city. The inside was very minimalist. Clean white walls, just enough furniture, and lots of black frames everywhere. Once I started observing the photos, a weird feeling crept into my mind. That's what made me feel a bit off. The photos. There were dozens of them, lined up perfectly. Every inch of the wall seemed to have a face staring back at me. They weren't normal portraits either. They looked private. A woman brushing her teeth, a man staring out of a dark window, a kid sleeping on a couch, all black and white, all incredibly sharp, and all deeply unsettling, as none of them were looking at the camera. I remembered standing in front of one photo, a woman undressing in what looked like her bedroom.
Wow. Your models do know how to pose, huh? Looks so natural.
They aren't models, they're real people. He smiled, almost proud. I laughed, thinking he was joking.
So how did you capture them?
Secretly, through windows. It's the best way, honestly. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. He poured us wine and served pasta. I kept picking at my plate. My appetite was gone. Every now and then, he'd glance over my shoulder like he was checking the light. Then, he started justifying his peeping Tom behavior for the sake of art. You see, I don't believe in posed photos. Real emotion happens when people don't know they're being watched. That's when they're most vulnerable. I asked if he had ever gotten caught. Once, he said, sipping his wine. She was angry, but I apologized and made it up to her. That's when my gut screamed at me to leave. I thanked him for dinner and said I needed to get going, but Liam stood up quickly, blocking the front door. Wait. Before you go, I want to show you my masterpiece. My heart dropped. I smiled politely and nodded, pretending to be curious. All the while, I was trying to come up with an excuse, something to get out fast. As he turned toward a hallway, I quietly slipped a fork off the table and hid it in my sleeve. He led me to a door at the end of the hall. Even before he unlocked it with a key, I could smell something awful behind it. That was red flag number 200. The room was dimly lit. The smell was choking my nostrils, like something rotten had been soaked in chemicals. The moment the door creaked open, I knew I wasn't safe. There was a chair in the center of the room, and a woman was on it. At first, I thought she was alive, but her skin was gray. Her limbs were swollen. Her head was tilted, and she had this horrible, stiff smile on her face. Her eyes were fixated on me. Her eyeballs were filled with red veins and opened too wide. When I looked closer, I noticed movement inside her mouth. For a second, I thought she was really alive, but then her mouth moved slowly. Suddenly, her jaw flung open, and clouds of maggots dripped to the floor. Tiny maggots wriggled through her hair, too. She was wearing a red bathing suit, like she had been at the beach. But now, she was posed like a mannequin, propped up like a trophy. I felt the fork slide from my hand and hit the floor. Liam stepped inside, eyes glowing with sick joy. She's beautiful, right? He whispered. I caught her swimming alone 2 summers ago. I watched her for weeks before I made my move. Look at that expression. Fear, trust, confusion, all frozen forever. I couldn't breathe or blink. My brain kept trying to tell me this was fake, a sick art piece, but it wasn't. The smell was real, the flies were real, and so was the psychopath standing next to me. He kept talking, laughing like it was the best moment of his life. Suddenly, something even more horrifying happened. I guessed it was the decomposition or the outside air getting in that room, but the woman's face suddenly slothed off her skull, revealing the rotten flesh and bone underneath. I screamed and ran for the door. Liam's voice echoed behind me. "Where are you going? There's no need to be scared. I can fix this. I'll glue it up. I thought you understood me." I sprinted out of the door straight to the street. I flagged down a couple driving by, screaming like a lunatic. They called the cops while I sat shaking in their back seat. When the cops arrived, I took them back to the apartment, but Liam was gone. The girl's body, the photos, were still there. My half-eaten plate of pasta was still resting on the table. They searched for weeks, put out alerts, and talked to neighbors. No one really knew him. He had only lived there a few months, paid in cash. I believe he even gave me a fake name. To this day, they haven't found him. But here's the part that really haunts me. About a month after everything happened, I received a package, no return address. Inside was a single photograph. It was me, sitting at a cafe with a coworker. I could tell the photo had been taken from outside the window. This happened last Saturday. I had just finished my first 2 weeks of college, and my roommate Liv was determined to drag me to my first frat party. I didn't want to go. I barely knew anyone on campus, and the idea of being surrounded by drunk strangers didn't exactly thrill me. But Liv had a way of convincing people. By 9:00 p.m., I was standing outside the Alpha Beta frat house, wearing one of her tops, trying not to look completely out of place. The party was loud and chaotic and smelled like spilled beer and sweat. Music blasted from massive speakers in the backyard. People were dancing, laughing, and playing beer pong. I stood near the edge of the crowd, clutching a warm solo cup of jungle juice, pretending to text someone, when I saw this guy sitting alone from the crowd. He was dressed in a green hoodie with hands in his lap and dangling his feet in the pool. While everyone else was trying to show off or hook up, he just sat there, watching. I don't know what compelled me to walk over. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was curiosity.
Mind if I sit here?
He nodded. Sure. He said his name was Mason. He was an art major and said he didn't really like parties, but came for the energy. There was something about him, calm yet uncomfortable. We talked about movies, tattoos, and the absurdity of frat life. He wasn't like the other guys here, so I let my guard down. And that was a huge mistake. Midway through our conversation, he rolled up the sleeve of his hoodie. "Check this out," he said. It was a tattoo on his forearm, a creature, big round eyes, sharp teeth, tiny ears. It looked like a demonic rabbit, cartoonish but disturbing. "This is Labubu," he said, touching the ink gently. "I collect them, every version. We're kind of like soulmates." I tried laughing, thinking he was joking, but soon realized he was being dead serious.
Oh, aren't those like creepy kid toys?
He still didn't laugh. "They're misunderstood. People make fun of them just to act cool." I gave an awkward chuckle and stood up.
Anyway, I should find Liv.
His eyes followed me as I walked away, but he didn't say anything. By midnight, the party was dying down. Liv had disappeared with some guy, and I didn't feel like waiting around. My dorm was only a 10-minute walk, and I figured I'd be fine. I put in one earbud and started heading back. It was a quiet night, empty sidewalks, soft breeze, no traffic. I remember thinking how peaceful it was. In that moment, I told myself that college might turn out to be fun. But all of a sudden, I began feeling nervous. I stopped the music and heard footsteps. Someone was walking behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it. Probably just another student heading home. But the steps didn't fade. Instead, they matched mine. When I slowed, they slowed. When I stopped, they stopped as well. I turned around. Under a streetlight, maybe 20 feet back, stood Mason. He was wearing the same hoodie. His arms were stiff at his sides. His head was slightly tilted. I blinked.
Mason?
He didn't speak a word, just smiled. Something about his smile made me fear for my life. He then jerked his left shoulder twice and started chanting something. It took me a moment to hear exactly what he was saying. I listened carefully and heard him saying, "The boo-boo." He spoke like a toddler who just learned to talk. "The boo-boo." My stomach dropped.
What do you want?
I screamed while stepping back in caution. His footsteps picked up behind me. "You made Labubu sad," he called out. I didn't waste a second more. I turned and started sprinting. I could hear him chasing me. His steps weren't even footsteps anymore. They were loud, heavy thuds, like someone running unevenly or low to the ground. He was screaming that I offended him by insulting his soulmate. My dorm was a block away. I ran across the lawn, fumbling with my keycard. I slammed on the door and swiped my keycard. At the first try, the reader flashed red. Mason was inches away. With shaking hands, I swiped again, and finally, it turned green. I yanked the door open and slammed it behind me, locking it just as his footsteps reached the pavement. He was standing right outside. I could see him through the glass on the door. His breathing was heavy and ragged. His face was blank, but his eyes looked evil. He leaned close to the door and whispered, "You made Labubu sad. You shouldn't have." I backed away, heart thudding. I grabbed my phone and called campus security. They arrived 10 minutes later, but Mason had left by then. I complained to the authority who checked on him, but that freak lied to their face, saying he never even met me. Since there was no evidence, no actions were taken against him. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. The next day at around 3 a.m. in the morning, I heard something slide across the floor. I sat up. There was an envelope on the ground. Someone had pushed it under my door. There was a photo of me in it, taken earlier that night, sitting by the pool next to Mason. In the bottom corner, written in red ink, were the words, "Labubu remembers." My hands started shaking. I threw the picture away and double-checked the lock again. I barely slept. When the sun came up, I packed a bag and went straight to Liv's dorm to stay there for a few days. But this morning, just as I was leaving, I went back to my room to grab my laptop, and I almost screamed when I entered my room. There was a pink Labubu toy sitting on my pillow. Its wide eyes stared directly at me, its jagged teeth stretched in a grin that felt too real. I threw it in the dumpster and changed my dorm. I don't know what Mason wants. I don't know if he's going to make my life miserable now, but I do know one thing. I should have never laughed at Labubu. This took place about a year ago, and I still haven't talked much about it. I won't tell my friends. Hell, even my family hasn't heard about it. I know they'll say it was because I didn't get enough sleep, that I was stressed and just seeing things, but I know what I saw. I know what I heard. I worked at a military hospital near the edge of a war zone during the night shifts. Most of the cases we got were from injuries like burns and shrapnel cuts and amputations. I got used to seeing things that would scare most people. That's how the field of medical care is. After some point, you just work like a machine to meet the needs of your responsibility. It was a quiet night until 11:50 p.m. when a new patient came into the emergency room. Someone who wasn't a soldier, no name or dog tags. Although his body was severely injured, I remembered his face the most. The left side was completely torn apart, leaving burned skin, teeth, and no eye. He looked like he had been hit by a blast. When they wheeled him in, his body was still shaking. He was crying and yelling. He was making only sounds, not words. I can't describe the pain. After stabilizing him, we sent him to room 206 for overnight observation. Due to a shortage of staff, they instructed me to remain in the room with him and ensure his safety until morning. I wasn't that tired, honestly. I'd had worse shifts. I put a chair next to the bed, checked his vital signs, and turned down the lights. His sobs were still soft and hoarse. It was like he wasn't even strong enough to scream anymore. I told him over and over,
"You're safe. You're no longer in the field. Everything will be fine."
He didn't answer, just kept crying in a voice that slowly faded into moaning. He finally stopped sometime after 1 a.m. I thought he fell asleep and I can take a short nap. I looked at him. He was lying still with half of his face turned toward the window where the moonlight was coming in. His chest was going up and down. I closed my eyes in relief and eventually drifted off. I don't recall how long I slept, but a sudden feeling woke me up from my slumber. I felt like someone was looking right at me. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was the man sitting up on his bed and watching me. I'm not easily scared, but the way he looked at me that time sent a shiver down my spine. I saw the clock. It was 3:30 in the morning. In the moonlight, his face looked 10 times more horrible. The eye he still had was wide open. In a shaking voice, I asked,
"Did you need something?"
He smiled at me, a dry, broken smile. He then took a deep breath and replied, "All my pain is gone now." His voice sounded cold and raspy, but he spoke in a tone that felt like a huge weight had been taken off his shoulders. I could feel my hands getting numb hearing him speak. I tried to keep my voice steady as I stuttered.
"Okay, that's excellent. But you should lie down. I'm going to call the doctor."
When I got up to reach for the phone, he laughed. It began slowly. The noise got louder, more twisted and wrong. The laugh sounded like it came from a person within a person. My heart was racing as I stumbled backward and ran out of the room. I thought the patient was going into some kind of shock. I ran down the hall and found Dr. Kareem, the on-call doctor. He came back with me. He asked me how much sleep I had and said I looked pale the whole time. When we got to the room and turned on the lights, the soldier was on the bed, flat out, not moving. His mouth and eyes were wide open. With a stethoscope on his chest, Dr. Kareem checked his vital signs and took his pulse. But then he looked at me with a strange face. "Naomi, this guy's been dead for almost 2 hours." I turned my gaze back to the patient who was lying on the bed and was taken aback by what I heard. I was feeling sick. I said in a whisper,
"But I talked to him. He got up. He gave me a smile. Doctor, he laughed. He said he wasn't in pain anymore. I swear to God."
But Dr. Kareem watched me like I'm some delusional grandmother ranting utter nonsense. "Naomi, you've been working too much. How about you take some time off? I'll inform the morgue to care of the body." And just like that, he walked away. I stood there, looking at the dead patient in front of me for a few more minutes, then went back home without saying anything more to anyone at the hospital. All the way, I kept arguing with myself on whether it was a bad dream or grim reality. I know what I saw, though. That man returned, smiled, and said those words to me, even only for a moment. I was told to take a week off. Yes, I did. After that night, though, I never went back to room 206, not even to look at it. Afterward, I looked at the hospital records. No one was able to find him. No name, nothing. No one came to claim the body. 3 days later, they buried him in an unmarked grave near the military base. I sometimes wonder if I was the last person he saw while he was living, or the first person who saw him when he was someone else. The lock clicked wrong when I closed the door behind me. Not broken wrong, just off, like someone had been messing with it recently. That should have been the red flag. The Desert Rose Motel wasn't exactly the Ritz, but it was the only place with vacancy on this stretch of highway, and my eyes begged me to shut them ASAP. My hands shook as I fumbled with the key card, telling myself it was just the 3 Red Bulls I'd chugged to make it through Nevada. Room 127 smelled like cigarettes and industrial cleaner. It was the kind of place where the bedspread probably glowed under blacklight, but I had slept in worse accommodations before. I dragged my suitcase inside and immediately flipped every lock I could find. I secured the door with a deadbolt, a chain, and even wedged a chair under the door handle. You might call it paranoia, but traveling alone as a woman teaches valuable lessons. The desk clerk was an amiable middle-aged guy with greasy hair and a smile that lingered too long when he handed me the key.
You'll love that room, sweetie. Real quiet, private,
He'd said, eyes raking all over me like he was taking in a fresh inventory. Both his lecherous gaze and words made my skin crawl.
Just a night, Susie.
I'd told myself as I bolted to the room. I showered with the bathroom door open, keeping one ear out for any sounds. The water pressure was pathetic, and the shower curtain had this weird way of billowing toward me like something was moving the air around. I kept yanking it back. It kept drifting inward, brushing against my arm with this clammy touch that made me want to scream. By 11 p.m., I'd convinced myself I was being unreasonable. Although it felt shady, I reminded myself that it was just a motel with people around. The TV was loud enough to drown out my racing thoughts, some mindless reality show about first world problems. I was finally starting to relax when I heard it. The doorknob turned. Not violently. It was slow and deliberate. I muted the TV and held my breath, watching the knob twist back and forth. The deadbolt held, but that soft metallic scraping sound continued. Someone was working on the lock. I immediately grabbed my phone, but my hands were shaking so bad I could barely unlock it. Suddenly, the sound stopped. Everything went dead quiet except for the blood pounding in my ears. Maybe I'd imagined it. It could be some other confused tenant. Right then, I heard the chain rattle again. The door creaked open just a crack, some 2 inches, but the chain was stretched tight across the gap. I could see part of the hallway through the sliver of space, the ugly orange carpet and that flickering fluorescent light. And I could also see the eyes of the shadow that was moving back and forth to get a better view inside. It inhaled a sigh as if physically relieved at the sight. That's when a full-throated, ear-piercing scream left my mouth and probably woke up half the motel. The door slammed shut so fast I heard the frame shake. I called 911, but my voice kept breaking. The operator kept asking me to repeat myself because I couldn't get the words out coherently.
Someone was in my room. No, not in my room. Trying to get in. They had a key. They opened the door.
The cops showed up 20 minutes later. They took my statement, checked the locks, and walked around the outside of the building with their flashlights. Everything looked normal. The desk clerk, a different guy now, insisted that only housekeeping and maintenance had master keys, and both of those guys had day shifts.
Yeah, probably just someone who got confused about their room number,
one of the cops said.
Had a few drinks, you know how it is, ma'am.
But I knew what I'd heard and seen. Whoever it was, they were there with a purpose, and they could return. The thought was enough to keep me up the whole night. The next morning, I packed my stuff in record time. I was desperate to get as far away from the desert rose as possible. When I arrived at the front desk to check out, the greasy, middle-aged clerk was back. He looked nervous when he saw me. His eyes kept flickering toward the back office.
Everything okay with your stay?
He gulped.
Someone tried to get into my room last night.
That's impossible. We have very strict security protocols.
Police said only housekeeping and maintenance have master keys.
Right, yes, that's correct.
But his eyes were doing that thing again, darting around like he was looking for an escape route. That's when I noticed the key ring hanging from his belt. Way too many keys for a desk clerk, and one of them looked different from the others. Newer, shinier.
Where's your maintenance man?
I asked.
He doesn't come in till later.
What's his name?
The clerk's mouth opened and closed like a fish.
I don't think I should.
I trusted my gut feeling and called the police again. Turns out, the desk clerk, Eddie Torino, had been making his own master keys for months, not to steal anything or hurt anyone, just to watch the women sleep. He'd let himself into rooms where single women were staying, stand in the doorway and watch them for hours. Sometimes he'd take pictures with his phone, or just stand there and breathe. 4 other women had stayed in room 127 over the past 3 months. They all woke up with that weird feeling that someone had been there but couldn't prove it. Those confused women checked out early, convinced they were losing their minds. The only reason I found out the truth was because I was awake and screamed. The only reason he got caught was because I made noise. Eddie's in jail now, but I still can't sleep in hotels anymore. Every time I hear a door handle turn or see a maintenance uniform, I'm right back in that room, watching that door open inch by inch. The worst part isn't that he was there. The worst part is where else he could be, because he comes with many faces, and sometimes they are familiar. It was a quiet Wednesday night shift at the Burger King where I worked. The kind of slow evening where even the hum of the fryer felt louder than usual. I was 26, just trying to scrape through the last hour before closing. There were no customers inside, no music, just the soft buzzing of fluorescent lights and the low crackle of the intercom static. Then, the door creaked open. An old woman shuffled in. She appeared to be in her late 70s and was wearing a thick shawl, despite the warm weather outside. Her hair was long, brittle, and mostly gray. She didn't make eye contact, just kept her head low, muttering something I couldn't catch. I put on my best customer service voice.
Hi, what can I get for you tonight?
She looked up at me briefly, her eyes sunken and dull.
Small fries. And a large cup of salt.
I blinked.
I'm sorry, did you say salt?
Yes, a large cup of it.
She replied, more clearly this time. I chuckled awkwardly, thinking she was joking.
We don't really serve salt like that, but I can give you a few packets.
I need more than packets.
She snapped, her voice still soft but now edged with something sharp.
I need it.
There was something off about her tone. I could feel it in my chest. That sinking feeling you get when something mundane suddenly feels wrong. I hesitated, but handed her a few salt packets anyway, hoping she'd just take them and leave. She stood still for a moment, staring at them like they weren't enough. Then, she ripped one open with her teeth and poured the salt directly into her mouth. No flinching, no reaction. She did it again, and again.
Ma'am,
I said gently.
you can't just...
Suddenly, she slammed her fist on the counter, making me jump.
I need more.
She hissed. Her lips were dry and cracked, white dust clinging to the corners. She reached across the counter, her gnarled fingers grabbing at the condiment drawer and yanking it open.
Ma'am, stop!
I called out, backing away. She was tearing open every drawer she could find, grabbing salt packets by the handful and shoving them into her mouth, chewing them like candy. Some spilled out, trailing onto the floor. Then she began to cough, as if it was becoming difficult for her to breathe. Still, she continued mumbling. She was speaking fast, frantic gibberish, as if she were reciting something under her breath, perhaps not even in English. She began pacing in circles, faster and faster, whispering whatever strange words came to her lips. I ran to get my shift manager, Samuel, who was in the back prepping closeout inventory. As soon as he saw her, he picked up the phone to call the police. That's when she screamed. It wasn't the scream of a scared old woman. It was a deep, primal, and almost inhuman scream. She picked up a plastic chair from the dining area, one of those lightweight ones, and hurled it across the room. It cracked against the soda machine. Samuel told me to stay behind the counter. He was still on the phone with dispatch when I peeked out again. She was gone. We searched the lobby, checked the bathrooms, and even looked outside. Nothing. All that was left were hundreds of torn salt packets strewn across the floor. and claw marks dug deep into the edge of the counter. I swear to God, I still don't know how she did that. Human nails shouldn't cut through wood like that. The police showed up 20 minutes later. They took our statements, looked around, and didn't seem to find anything useful. They said she might have been mentally ill, maybe on something, possibly homeless. But their contorted faces made me believe that they didn't even believe in their theories. We closed an hour later. I didn't say much. I just wanted to get in my car and drive home and forget the whole thing. But when I got outside, there was a pile of salt on my windshield, perfectly shaped, like someone had poured it deliberately, right in the center. I stood frozen, keys in my hand, heart thudding so loud I could hear it in my ears. And next to it, scrawled in what looked like fingernail scratches on the hood, were the words,
You don't know what it feeds.
Feeling paranoid and scared for my life, I decided to just get in the car and drive the hell out of that Burger King, when someone grabbed me by the shoulders from behind. Before I could make out what was happening, my attackers spun me around and I was standing face to face with that crazy woman. She leaned in closer to me and opened her mouth wide. The inside of her mouth was red with skin uprooted, blisters forming on her tongue, and bloody gums that made her breath smell horrible. Her teeth were rotten, and I knew it was all because of that excessive amount of salt. She must have been eating it for quite a while now. She just kept howling like a dog, stretching her mouth wider and wider each time. I forgot to scream. My vision started to blur, and I was on the verge of fainting when she slapped me hard on my face, making my lips bleed. She ran into the woods and disappeared. I don't know how I drove back home that night. I never worked another night shift after that. Samuel said he started getting calls from random numbers that would only hiss or whisper when he answered. Another coworker swore he saw the same woman standing across the street from his apartment, just staring. We don't talk about her much anymore. Most people think it was some crazy woman, maybe on drugs or having a breakdown, but not me, because occasionally I still hear howling at night, which doesn't sound like an animal. It sounds like a human mimicking an animal. I fly a lot for work. Airports, hotels, and boardrooms are some recurrent places in my life. But now, I'm a little terrified of traveling to new places because something happened during my last flight. I'm a 29-year-old marketing consultant. Last week, I was just wrapping up a brutal 4-day trip in Dallas. Meetings from morning till night. I was totally worn out by the time I got on the red-eye flight back to Seattle. My only goal was to get on the plane, plug in my headphones, and fall asleep. I was in seat 14D, which was by the aisle. The woman in the middle spot, 14C, was already there when I got there. She was pretty, but her eyes were very big, and they looked creepy along with her pale skin. She had her hair neatly pulled back in a bun, but her smile appeared too fixed, as if she were overly aware of her surroundings. When she saw me, she smiled big and said,
You look tired.
I politely nodded and laughed. Yeah, it's been a long week. She tilted her head to the side and replied,
You look like someone who has many dreams, but doesn't tell anyone.
I took a moment to think about whether I had heard her correctly. Okay? She laughed lightly and patted the armrest between us.
Sorry. I read people. Habit.
That was just the start. For the first 30 minutes of the flight, she kept trying to make conversations. Asked where I was from, what I did, if I believed in fate. Normal questions on the surface, but the way she asked them made me uncomfortable. She would tilt her head and repeat my words back to me, verbatim. She copied how I adjusted my sleeves and how I crossed my legs. Every little movement I made, she mirrored it seconds later. At one point, I said, I'm probably going to try and get some sleep soon. She replied,
Sleep is a funny thing. You never know who's watching you while you're out.
That was enough for me. I put my headphones on and leaned back as if I were going to sleep. It was quiet for the rest of the trip. At least, that's how I felt after closing my eyes. I was damn sure that the crazy woman probably watching me, but I didn't open my eyes to find out. We landed about 1 a.m. As expected, the airport was roughly half dead. People were sleepy as they picked up their bags and walked out the door. Once I got up and grabbed my carry-on from the overhead bin, I noticed something odd. The woman who was behind me was walking out of the airport. She hadn't brought anything. She had no purse or luggage. I quickly crossed the terminal to get to the airport hotel, thinking it would be best if we don't cross path again. There's no way I wanted to face her after how she behaved in the flight. As I got to the glass entrance of the hotel, I glanced behind me, just out of instinct, and there she was, standing outside like a statue. Her eyes were fixated on me and she hardly blinked. She didn't wave or smile, just watched. I told myself it was probably a coincidence. Maybe she was waiting for someone. Maybe she lived nearby and didn't need luggage. My brain tried hard to rationalize it. I checked in, received my key, and went up to my room 508, 5th floor. Once I got in, I felt better. I freshened up and went straight to bed. I'm not sure how long I was out before I woke up to this painful feeling. There was huge pressure on my chest. It was as if someone put a boulder on me and my lungs were crushing with its weight. I opened my eyes, gasping for air, and immediately screamed. The psycho woman from the flight was sitting on my chest, her knees pressed into my sides, straddling my ribs. Her face was inches from mine. Her wide eyes looked even wider in the dark, and her smile, God, her smile, it was stretched so far it didn't look human.
You weren't supposed to ignore me,
she whispered. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. She reached into her pocket and held out a metal hair clip that was bent at the tip.
I used this to open your door.
She giggled. I tried to scream. She pressed a finger to my lips.
Don't spoil this beautiful moment of ours.
I exploded. I pushed her really hard. She tripped and fell to the floor, yelling in pain. I quickly grasped my phone and dialed the front desk. Hello? Someone had broken into my room. As I talked, she got up and ran away before I could grab her. Security arrived within minutes. I showed them the bent hair clip she dropped and the security latch on my door with signs of tampering. The security checked the entire lobby and hotel exit, but she was gone. Only evidence were the CCTV footages showing her entering the hotel, then running out from the back door. It was as if she knew the building too well. When the cops arrived, I gave them her seat number and flight info. TSA pulled the boarding records, but it was discovered later that she used fake ID, even a fake passport. They never found her. The officers told me I was lucky, that she could have had a knife, that she could have done worse. But here's the thing, she did do worse. Not physically, but I haven't slept a full night since. I checked the locks 4 times before bed. When I go on trips, I put a chair under the door handle. I see that smile every time I close my eyes. I can hear her say,
You were supposed to pay attention to me.
I wish I hadn't boarded that plane, or at least gotten a different seat so I never met her. People think that the mean kids, the ones who wear black, lurk, and frown in the back of the class, are always the ones who cause trouble. Well, that's not always true. I was a good kid. I did well in school. I had some friends, but not many. I was quiet, normal, and easy to forget in the crowd of students, which meant that being compared to Tessa always made me feel like I wasn't good enough. Tessa was the type of girl who floated instead of walked. Her beautiful brown hair, accompanied by charming laughter, pulled everyone's attention towards her, not just by classmates. She was also my teacher's favorite. I mean, it was frustrating to witness how things just went her way, even when she hardly put in any effort. All the nerdy, unpopular kids admired him. Everyone wanted to be her, even when she was mean to them. I still remember it was a Tuesday when this happened. Before first class, there was always a lot of noise in the hallways. Tessa walked in with a new Stanley cup in her hand. It was one of those limited edition shimmering cups that sold out online in hours. I was sitting at my desk in my homeroom. She flashed it like a prize, and a lot of students crowded around her.
Oh my god, Tessa! Is that the new shimmer lavender? It's very hard to get. What can I say? Rare things find rare people.
Tessa smirked, giving me a side eye while clutching the cup in her hands. I could tell she was trying to make me jealous, and I guess she succeeded. While walking past me, she even knocked me with her elbow on the head. Something inside me broke. I kept telling myself not everyone gets what they want, but deep down I knew I wanted something more than Tessa's cup. I wanted to rip off that sly smirk from her face forever. I could no longer think straight by fifth period. Tessa was sitting next to me, yet behaved like I didn't exist. The next class was gym, and I watched Tessa leave her things on her desk to head for the changing room. Her shiny new Stanley cup sat prominently on her desk, constantly reminding me that I would never be the special one. The room slowly became empty. I stayed back. My hands were getting cold and my breathing grew rapid. I looked at the cup and then I looked around. There was no one there. I went over to her desk and picked it up. I didn't think it would be that heavy. I could see how the shimmer changed with the light reflecting on it. I held it over the floor, ready to let go. I grinned, thinking how Tessa will break down crying when she finds her dearest cup damaged. It gave me goosebumps, thinking I finally found a way to beat the most popular girl in school. If I can't be her, then I'll destroy what's hers forever. But just as I was about to smack it on the floor, I heard Tessa's voice from behind.
What are you doing?
I turned. Tessa stood in the doorway, eyes wide in anger. I would have put the cup down, letting the entire thing go. I would have apologized to her, saying it was just a stupid decision I was going to take in the heat of the moment. But she said something that stopped me from being the good kid.
How dare you touch my cup with your filthy hands?
She started coming closer.
You think breaking it will make you me? You're nothing but trash. And that's what you'll be for the rest of your life. It's just a cup, right?
I shot back, louder than I intended. She just kept walking towards me.
Of course you're jealous of me. You're such a freak.
I told her to back off. She didn't. She shoved me. It wasn't hard, but it made the cup slip from my hand. It hit the floor with a dull thud, but didn't break. My hand hit the desk as I tried to catch myself. In that moment, I lost it. There was a sharp pencil on the nearby desk. I picked it up without thinking, and then Tessa picked up her cup. The same evil smirk was back on her face.
These cups don't break so easily, you know? But how would you? The cup's worth is higher than your dad's paycheck, girl.
With one swing, I stabbed her in the eye with the pencil, and her scream echoed in the school. Blood spilled down her cheek. She dropped to the floor, thrashing. The pencil was still stuck deep in her eye. She was writhing in pain, lying on the ground. Blood was everywhere, and her body trembled like a headless chicken. People came rushing. I don't remember much after that. They were screaming. Someone pulled me out of the room. Someone else held Tessa down while she cried and bled and begged for help. They said I stood in the hallway until the school counselor came and took me away. Tessa survived, but she lost her left eye. She has to wear a prosthetic now. Her face is scarred. Later, I heard she left school in the neighborhood with her parents. As for me, I was arrested. They tried me as a minor. I spent 3 years in juvenile detention and 2 more years of court-mandated therapy. Now, I talk at schools, not because I want to. I am compelled to do so. They bring me into classrooms and auditoriums where I explain to students how envy consumes one's soul, how I let a stupid Stanley Cup and everything it represented destroy my life and someone else's. I show them the cup. Yes, Tessa's Stanley Cup. It's cracked now, dented at the base from when it hit the floor that day. They gave it to me after the trial as part of my rehabilitation program. This object serves as a daily reminder of my guilt for the rest of my life. Every time I see it sparkle under the lights, I remember the blood. I remember the scream Tessa let out, the look in her good eye when she realized what I'd done. I don't know if anyone out there faced something similar after losing a loved one, but if you did, let me tell you, I understand your pain, and that's why I've decided to share my story at IMR Scary Tales. I'm Mira, and I live in a small town near a forest, the kind of place where smoke from the woods always fills the air, and old women still put salt lines on their windowsills to keep evil spirits away. The kind of place where people pray for the safe return of their sons, and sometimes never stop. My husband, Arav, was a soldier. Arav was a strong and kind man who would take in stray dogs and become emotional during patriotic songs. We were married less than a year when he was deployed. I remember the last morning I saw him, his uniform perfectly ironed, his boots polished, and his nervous smile hiding something he didn't want me to see. I got the telegram 8 months later. It came at dusk. A man in uniform stood outside my cottage, his face unreadable. He didn't need to say anything. I saw the folded paper in his hand and immediately crumpled to the ground. My knees gave out before he said a word. "We regret to inform you." I didn't hear the rest. My mind went blank. They say I fainted. Kavya, my sister, said she found me on the floor, cold and barely breathing. She spent the rest of the night putting me to bed, giving me warm water by spoon and brushing my hair like I was a kid again. Though I was awake, I felt nothing. That numbness that wraps around your bones and makes you think it'll never go away. I felt only that. I remember hearing the clock that night. I remember going to bed without listening to my husband's voice. The house was too quiet for me. I finally went to sleep after midnight. At around 2:30 a.m., I heard Arav calling my name. It was so soft and gentle that I dismissed it as the wind, but then again, I heard it. It was clearly his. I sprang up in bed. The window next to me was open, and the wind was making the curtains flap. For a brief moment, it felt like a dream. I took a deep breath. Then it happened again. "Mira, come here." It was his voice echoing in the night, like he was calling me from the edge of the trees. I should have screamed. I should have shut the window and crawled back into bed. But my grief spoke louder than reason. If there was even a sliver of a chance. I wrapped a shawl around me and stepped out into the night barefoot. The grass was cold and damp. The moon lit the path between our home and the forest in pale silver. Everything else was still. Not even the insects chirped. My feet led me forward, pulled by that voice. It was always just ahead, deeper and deeper into the woods. I should have known something was wrong when I noticed the silence. No rustling animals, no birds, just a stillness that felt staged. That's when I saw him. A figure standing a few meters ahead, just beyond a cluster of tall trees. He was facing away, motionless, but I recognized the shape instantly. The cut of his uniform, the slope of his shoulders, the way he held his arms just slightly bent at the elbow, like Arav always did when he was deep in thought. My heart nearly stopped.
Arav, where are you?
I whispered. He didn't answer, didn't move. I stepped closer, whispering his name again, tears welling in my eyes. Slowly, he turned, and I felt something in me break. It was him, and at the same time, it wasn't. Half of his face was rotten. The skin slacked like wet fabric, exposing his cheekbone. His eyes were gone, only a pair of empty sockets glistening under the moonlight. Yet he looked straight at me with a kind of pain I can't explain. He appeared to be attempting to express something, yet he couldn't recall how. His mouth opened, twitching. Sound came out, but no words, just gurgling gasps, like he was trying to breathe through whatever took his life. And then he smiled. His smile was small, crooked, and bone-chilling, causing every hair on my body to stand up. I screamed so loudly that my throat turned raw and everything became blurry. The next thing I remember, it was morning. An old lumberjack named Suresh found me near the forest's edge. I was lying beside a thorn bush, unconscious. The brambles ripped my nightgown, leaving my feet scratched and bleeding. Everyone said I must have sleepwalked, that my mind had snapped under grief, but I remember every second of what I saw. My sister brought a doctor. He checked me, said I was physically unharmed, but warned Kavya that I was in a trauma-induced fugue state. He advised Kavya that I needed rest. My mind was filling in the blanks, but here's the thing. No one told him about the voice, or the man in the trees, or the smile. And yet, the first thing he asked was, "Did you dream about your husband calling to you?" That's when I knew something deeper was at work. No one ever recovered Arav's body. The army said the explosion left nothing behind, but something did return that night. Since that night, I never went back into the forest, not even near the tree line. But every year, on the night I got the telegram, I leave a plate of warm food on a flat stone at the edge of the trees. Chapati, dal, and water, just like I used to make for my husband when he came home. And every year, the plate is empty by sunrise. There are no animal tracks visible, no crumbs. There was only a faint impression of a boot print on the soil. I don't care if you think I'm crazy. I know what I saw. I know whose voice called me, and I know he's still out there. I'm a 19-year-old female who just got into college, and so far I was living a pretty normal life. I enjoy makeup and horror movies, and I often joke about them with my friends. I recently got on Tinder. It started as a joke with my roommates. They'd said I'd receive a ton of matches because I'm the hot one. I didn't think much of it because I've always been used to the attention. As I walked through the hallway in my shorts, I noticed that some boys would gaze at me with smiles, while some girls appeared visibly displeased. But once I went live on Tinder, I didn't expect my phone to blow up with notifications. I mostly ignored the weird guys. I just flirted a little to pass the time. But then I got a message from someone with the username @DevotedBlood. Isn't that an intriguing name? I believe that the profile was fake. It had no pictures, just a black and white rose for the profile pic. But the first message was kind of poetic. "I saw you. You're brighter than the moon and darker than sin." I rolled my eyes, but decided to strike up a conversation just for fun.
Smooth. You write that in every girl's DMs?
He replied instantly, "No, only you." What followed were long messages, obsessive. I'd received love letters, poems, and even drawings. At first, I laughed about it with my friends. It was harmless, or so I thought. But then he started sending photos, notes written on crumpled paper, smeared in what he said was blood. One had my name written over and over again, like in some horror movie. Another said, "I'll never let anyone else have you." At that point, I unmatched him. I believe the message was from an angsty teenager trying to appear edgy. But then, the texts started coming through WhatsApp. Same username, same poems. One night, I was lying in my room scrolling through reels. I went home for the holidays and my mom was away on a work trip. Suddenly, I got texts from him again. "Do you know how crazy I am for you? I love you." I was in no mood to further encourage this creepy stranger, so I sent,
I bet you aren't man enough to actually show your face, loser.
It was just a petty message meant to irritate him. Like, what could he really do? 5 minutes later, my doorbell rang. It was around 12:30 tonight. I was home alone. My heart dropped. I went downstairs, trying to be as quiet as possible, and peeked into the peephole. I didn't see anyone outside. I gently cracked open the door. My eyes wandered over the empty porch, and then I looked down at the ground beneath me. There was a red envelope sitting on the doorstep. I picked it up with shaking hands. It reeked of a mix of iron and something sour. Once I opened the letter, my palms got sweaty in fear. The words were written in blood, and it read, "Did you miss me?" I slammed the door shut and locked everything. My voice was breaking as I talked to the 911 dispatcher, almost on the verge of crying. She tried to calm me down and told me to stay on the line until officers arrived. I moved away from the front and turned off all the lights, hoping whoever was out there would think I wasn't home. But then I made a mistake. I went to check the backyard window, and there was indeed someone. It was a guy standing shirtless in the middle of the yard, completely still. He was merely focusing his gaze on my window. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I just watched in frozen horror. I grabbed a flashlight and flicked it on him. The beam hit his chest first, and I saw my name was carved into his skin. Trails of flesh blood oozed from every single letter. K-I-A-R-A. It looked like it had been done with something jagged, like a knife or glass. As I moved the flashlight to his face, he slowly lifted his head. And it wasn't some stranger. It was my best friend's stepdad, Alan. The same guy who used to drive us to school, who always stood a little too close, and who one time told me, "You look older than 19. The one who once commented on my Instagram selfie, "Beautiful, just like your mother." I had always felt something off about him, but I never imagined this. He gave me this twisted, almost childlike grin, like he was proud of what he'd done. I dropped the flashlight, screaming my lungs out. I rushed back in my room and crouched in the corner, crying like a 6-year-old. The cops arrived 5 minutes later, but he was already gone. They searched the yard and confiscated the letter and even discovered bloody footprints leading into the woods. I gave them all the details, the messages, the username, the notes, but they couldn't find anything linking @DevotedBlood to Alan. His number wasn't in my phone. The Tinder profile was already deleted. It was like he'd scrubbed everything. They issued a warrant, but he vanished. Surprisingly, he had quit his job and left my friend and her mom months back. My friend never talks about it. She can't even look at me in the eye. Her mom was taken in for questioning, but she claimed to know nothing. Weeks have gone by and I still live in fear. A few nights ago, I heard a noise at my window. I swear, when I looked, I saw a shadow move away. The next morning, I found a white rose on my porch. It was soaked in human blood, tied to a note that simply said, "The blood may fade, but I never will." I'm getting a restraining order against him this weekend. My mom has told the cops to keep an eye on the guy and get him into custody the moment they spot him. I really hope he gets caught, so I can have sound sleep at night. The knock came at 6:43 a.m. I know this because I was staring at my phone, trying to decide whether 3 hours of sleep counted as rest or merely as expensive insomnia. Business trips to nowhere towns always screwed with my head, but this Hampton Inn felt different.
Housekeeping! Just need to clean real quick.
I froze. The voice was male and gravelly, like he'd been smoking since middle school. I hadn't put out the do not disturb sign because, honestly, who bothers you at 6:43 a.m.?
I didn't request housekeeping.
I called through the door.
Hotel policy, ma'am. Daily cleaning. It won't take but a minute.
I moved closer to the peephole. A man in a gray janitor's uniform stood there, hands shoved deep in his pockets. Something about his posture made my skin crawl. He was too still, eager, and patient.
I said no, thank you.
He didn't move for a long moment. He just stood there, and I could feel him listening, breathing on the other side of that thin hotel door. Finally, his footsteps retreated down the hallway. I should have chalked it up to overzealous hotel staff and tried to squeeze in another hour before my client meeting. Instead, I found myself pacing the small room while that encounter replayed in my head like a broken record. 20 minutes later, I heard it again, the same knock and rhythm, but it wasn't my door. It was coming from down the hall. I pressed my ear to the door, holding my breath.
Housekeeping! Just need to clean real quick.
I had to look. My primal gut was screaming that this wasn't right, and I've learned to trust that voice. It's kept me alive in boardrooms full of predators, and apparently it works in shady hotels too. I turned the deadbolt as quietly as possible and cracked the door open just enough to see down the hallway. Room 237. He was standing there in that same gray uniform. His hands weren't in his pockets anymore. They were on the door handle. He was trying to open it, rather desperately. He didn't have a cart, cleaning supplies, or key cards. He was merely a man in a worn-out uniform, testing door handles as if he were shopping for unlocked rooms. The woman in 237 must have been smarter than me, or maybe just more tired, because she didn't answer. He stood there for another 30 seconds, testing the handle again, then moved to 239. My hands were shaking now. I watched him try 3 more doors, the same routine each time. He performed a polite knock, recited the scripted line, and then gently tested the handle when no one answered. He moved like he had all the time in the world, like the moment was just another Tuesday morning. Room 243 opened. I couldn't see who answered, but I heard a woman's voice, groggy and confused.
I didn't order housekeeping.
Hotel policy, ma'am. Daily cleaning.
I don't know. I'm not dressed.
Won't take but a minute. Just need to check something real quick.
The way he said check something made my stomach turn. There was hunger in his voice now, barely contained excitement that hadn't been there when he knocked on my door. I slammed my door shut and grabbed my phone, fingers fumbling as I dialed the front desk.
Hampton Inn, this is Derek. How can I help you?
There's a man in a janitor's uniform going door to door, claiming to be housekeeping. He tried to get into my room, and now he's down the hall trying other doors.
A man? Ma'am, our housekeeper is a woman, and she doesn't start until 10 a.m.
The blood drained from my face.
What?
Maria is our only housekeeper on duty today, and she won't be in for another 2 hours. What room are you in?
231. He's at room 243 right now. I think he got someone to open their door.
I'm calling security and police right now. Stay in your room and don't open the door for anyone.
I hung up and pressed my ear to the door again. The hallway had gone quiet, too quiet. No voices, no footsteps, nothing. Then I heard it. A soft, muffled crying coming from down the hall that will haunt me until the day I die. I grabbed the security latch and chained my door, then dragged the desk chair over and wedged it under the handle. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, drowning everything else out. 3 minutes later, I heard running footsteps in the hallway. It had to be security, the police. They were shouting. Then the door slammed open.
Ma'am, are you okay? Ma'am, can you hear me?
The crying was louder now. I stayed pressed against my door for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Finally, there was a gentle knock on my door.
Miss, this is Officer Martinez with the police department. The man has been apprehended. You're safe now.
When I finally opened the door, the hallway was full of people. Police officers, hotel security, paramedics. The woman from 243 was sitting on the floor outside her room, wrapped in a hotel bathrobe, still crying. She was bleeding from her head. The man got inside and hit her with a rusty spanner. He could have done way worse to the woman if the cops didn't show up in time. Officer Martinez explained that the man had been using the janitor disguise to target female guests. He'd hit 3 other hotels in the past month, always the same route, always the same script. The officer's expression told me everything.
Let's just say your call saved her life.
I checked out that morning and drove straight home, but I can't shake the image of him standing in the hallway. The patience, the calculation, the way he'd tried my door handle just to see, just in case I'd been careless with the lock. I still travel for work, but now I always request rooms near the elevator, always check the peephole twice, always verify housekeeping with the front desk, even if it seems too much. Grief makes people do strange things. It had been 3 weeks since we lost our baby. One moment, we were excited first-time parents. The next, we were sitting in a sterile hospital room under fluorescent lights, while a doctor gave us the worst news of our lives. My wife, Madison, sat there, not crying, just breathing heavily. She changed a lot after that. Most of the time, she wouldn't get out of bed. She would hardly eat or talk. I watched my wife slip into this fog I couldn't pull her from. I tried everything, cooking her favorite meals, playing the music she used to love, and even reading aloud from the baby books we hadn't had the heart to throw away. Nothing worked. until I brought home a blue Labubu toy. Madison jokingly said that we'd put it on a shelf in our kids' room and say it was their watchdog. So I bought it off a reseller and gave it to her in the morning. Suddenly, her face lit up like she came back to reality. She held it in her arms and hugged it to her chest like it was alive. It seemed like the toy filled this huge void in her. At first, I was relieved. Anything was better than the blank stare she'd been giving me. But over the next several hours, the comfort turned into something much worse. Madison wrapped the Labubu in a tiny blue blanket. In the afternoon, I watched Madison spoon-feed the Labubu applesauce. By evening, she had placed it in the crib that was meant for our child. I couldn't stand it anymore. "That's not a real child, Madison. It's just a toy." She turned her face at me, and for the first time, I felt scared of my wife. They were bloodshot and filled with disdain.
Don't talk like that around our son.
I froze. "Maddie, that's not our son. Our son is—"
Stop!
Her lips trembled, and for a moment I thought she was about to cry. But then her face twisted into rage.
You're just like them. They said he was gone, but I can still feel him.
Her breathing was getting rapid, and I feared she might do something hurtful, so I didn't push it further. I told myself it was the grief talks, that it would pass, that sleep would help. I was wrong. That night, I woke up to an empty bed. Madison's creepy lullaby was echoing all around the house. I followed her voice and found her in the nursery. She was patting Labubu like she was putting a baby to sleep. She even rocked it in her arms while continuing the lullabies. The atmosphere dropped down as I felt a cold shiver in my spine. The next day, things got out of hand. I could hear Madison talking to the Labubu in a hushed tone, like she didn't want me to hear her.
You don't have to cry. Daddy will hold you soon. I promise.
Daddy? I'm no daddy to some creepy-ass toy. I tried to stop the madness. I tried to take it away from her. "Maddie, give me the toy." The second I reached for it, she screamed. She scratched my face and we knocked over the crib in the process. Her gaze changed immediately. She pointed at me, going full psychotic, and yelled,
You're trying to kill him again!
I backed away in shock. I should have called someone. I know that now. However, a part of me still believed that I could resolve the situation. So I waited for the night to fall. She calmed down by late afternoon. We didn't speak much. She sat in the rocking chair with the toy wrapped in the baby blanket, humming something under her breath. By 10 p.m., I was exhausted. I lay down and eventually drifted off. When I opened my eyes again, I couldn't move. My wrists and ankles were tied to the bed frame with strips of baby clothes, and Madison was standing right next to me holding a scalpel. I'd kept it in the emergency baby kit for cutting tags, medical tape, things like that. I'd forgotten it even existed. She leaned down and placed the Labubu on my chest. It sat there, tiny and motionless, staring up at me with those wide red eyes and razor teeth.
What kind of dad are you? Your son has been crying for you all night.
Madison, please! Her hands trembled as she raised the scalpel.
I'll untie you. If you kiss him.
I saw one small window of opportunity and took it. I agreed. Madison smiled big once I said yes to her madness. She set me free, and together we sat on the floor rocking and kissing the Labubu like it was our child. I watched her laugh, cry, and then laugh again. It was terrifying and painful at the same time. I made no wrong move until she got up, saying she needed to put our son in bed. The moment she left the room, I called the paramedics. I watched them take away my wife for psychiatric evaluation. She became frantic after being separated from the toy in the hospital. They had to sedate her because she was kicking and biting everyone who came near her. After extensive consultations, the doctors suggested taking her to a mental facility in Florida because her violent behavior was increasing rapidly. It's been 2 weeks. She's still at the facility. I visit her every week, but she rarely acknowledges me. The doctors say she's detached from reality. believes the toy is the baby we lost. They gave me her things in a cardboard box. I haven't opened it yet, but I know what's inside, that twisted little toy. Every night, I swear I hear something scratching inside the closet, but maybe that's just in my head. This happened last Friday. It was one of those slow, cloudy afternoons where the sky looked beat up and the mall parking lot was almost empty. I had the day off, so I finally went to look for the Stanley Cup that was trending so much online. They were sold out everywhere, so I went to a mall 15 minutes from home to see if I could get one. It wasn't a big spot. Since COVID, half of the shops have closed, but sometimes those smaller shops had stock that wasn't sold. I believed it was worth attempting. When I got inside, I went through the west hallway because the carpet still smelled like glue and old popcorn. A few kids were hanging out near the food court, but aside from that, the area felt quite deserted. I looked in 2 department stores but couldn't find the item I was searching for. As I was walking back to the exit, I saw a small store I had never seen before. It was hidden between a luggage store and a gloomy arcade. A faded sign that said gifts and collectibles was all it had for a name. Inside, the glass door was dirty, and there were lots of old toys, mugs, keychains, and other things that looked like they belonged in a thrift store. I didn't have much hope, but it was worth a try. I walked in and heard the bell above the door ring. A man was sitting behind the cash counter. He looked to be in his mid-50s. He had greasy gray hair and a polo shirt that was too big for his pants. I felt jitters because of his smile. He grinned so big that it felt as if he was trying too hard to be nice. He asked me before I even spoke, "Looking for the Stanley Cups, right?" I was so shocked that I didn't blink for a few seconds.
Well, yeah.
He leaned in and spoke softly.
"The good ones are all down in the basement. People are crazy about them, you know."
I didn't like the way he spoke. He was too eager to show me the stock. I didn't want to be rude, though. I ignored the warning signs because I thought maybe he did have the cups, and it would only be a matter of minutes. I agreed. He came around the counter, grabbed a ring of keys, and gestured for me to follow. Behind the counter, there was a narrow door that led to a dark tunnel that I hadn't seen before. It led to a metal door at the end, which he opened. It was dark, and the stairs were made of concrete. I could feel the temperature drop as we went down. There were a few flickering lights, and the air had a faint smell of mold and metal. I began to feel uncomfortable. I tried to break the quiet by saying,
I didn't catch your name.
He paused for a second, like he was deciding whether he should tell me or not. Then he said in a low voice, "You girls sure love these shiny things, ready to spend a lot just to stay relevant." I stopped.
What?
He chuckled and said he was just joking, but I could feel a twist in my chest. I looked up at the door we came down from and realized that if something happened to me in the basement, no one would know. A cold shiver ran down my spine.
My mom is waiting in the car. Maybe I should get her as well. She just texted me.
He stopped walking. I could see the twitch in his face. His jaw got tight. He suddenly replied, "There are no cups here." Now his voice was different. It's cold, no longer having to act so nice. He also said, "You need to leave." I quickly ran up the stairs, 2 at a time. I don't think I breathed until I ran back into the store. It didn't bother me if people saw me run. When I pushed the door open, I almost fell on the tile floor outside. As soon as I got to my car, I shut the door and started crying. It was like all the alarm bells I had been ignoring went off all at once. He knew what I wanted before I even said it. The shop was in a strange place, and there were no customers or stock to be seen. The most important thing was the way his voice changed when he heard that someone knew my whereabouts. I drove home straight away, shaking the whole time. I tried to find the store online later that night, but nothing came up. There was no listing, no Google ratings, and no social media. Like, it wasn't there. My boyfriend and I went back to the mall the next morning to see if it was still there. It was closed. The door had chains and a big padlock. Paper was put over the windows, and the only thing stuck to the glass was a note that said, "Closed permanently," in handwriting. I asked a security guard at the parking lot what had happened to the store. His face looked confused.
What store? It hasn't been rented in months.
We were still for a moment. It felt like my throat got tight. I still have no idea what I walked into. That man really wanted me to follow him, but I have no idea who he was or what his intention was behind taking me to that sketchy basement. I think about it all the time, though. If I hadn't talked about my mom, if I had gone all the way down to that basement, could I have ever made it? The quiet Thursday night left me questioning every life decision that had led me to work the closing shift at a Burger King. I was 25, halfway through a degree I might never finish, and clocking in extra hours just to keep up with rent. It was nearly 10:30 p.m. The dining area was empty. Just me behind the counter, wiping things down and watching the minutes crawl by. My manager, Daryl, was in the back counting tills. Just when I thought there were no more customers, I saw a man sitting alone in the corner booth. I hadn't seen him come in. There were no cars outside, yet he was just there. Middle-aged, probably in his mid-50s, wearing an outdated brown coat and a gray flat cap that looked older than me. He had no food on his table, and he didn't seem motivated enough to order. He was just staring at me. It continued for so long that I started fidgeting. I avoided eye contact, hoping he'd take the hint, but instead, he stood up and walked slowly to the counter. He stared for a few seconds, then spoke up in this hoarse, choked-up voice.
Margaret, it's really you.
I let out a nervous chuckle.
Sorry, you've got the wrong person.
But he didn't flinch.
No, I know those eyes. That little freckle above your lip, the way you tilt your head when you smile. It's really you.
I think you've mistaken me for someone else.
I replied, trying my best to stay polite but firm.
Come on, Margot.
I just told you, I'm not Margaret. My name is Maria.
His face twitched, like he couldn't process what I'd said. Shockingly, he started crying.
You always do this. You pretend not to know me, and then you say it was a prank. What enjoyment do you derive from torturing me?
Look, I'm telling you, I'm not the one you think. Please try and understand.
His tears transformed into laughter. Seeing him shift so fast from one emotion to the other, I could guess he's not mentally stable. And there was something off about his laughter. It didn't arise from amusement. It sounded forced. I stepped back from the counter.
Sir, please.
You remember the lake house?
He said suddenly.
You loved the way the rain sounded on the tin roof. You'd curl up in that old red blanket and fall asleep on my lap. Please don't pretend you don't know. Don't you dare pretend.
His voice was getting louder. None of that meant anything to me. I'd never been to a lake house.
Sir, please. I think you need to leave. My manager's in the back.
He reached for his pocket and then slapped something down on the counter. It was a photograph of a woman. She had long, dark curls, pale skin, and wide-set eyes, and she looked nothing like me. But he stared at the picture with reverence, then looked up at me with something in his eyes I can only describe as desperation.
You see?
He pointed at me.
It's you. It's always been you. Even death couldn't stop you from coming back to me.
I took a step back.
I'm calling security.
His expression changed instantly, from pleading to furious. He grabbed my wrist and started screaming.
You think I'm a fool? You think I don't know my own wife? You came back, and now you're mocking me?
I reached under the counter and pressed the silent alert button we were told to use for emergencies. That's when he leaned in close and whispered,
I dug you up once, Margaret. I'll do it again if I have to.
I froze. My body locked up and my throat went dry. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He started banging his head on the wooden counter while saying,
You always teased me, saying you'd haunt me if I ever let you go.
Blood burst from his forehead as he was hitting too hard. I couldn't believe my eyes.
But I didn't, Margaret. I never let you go. They buried you, but I didn't say goodbye.
Please let go of me!
I screamed, breaking down in tears. His blood splattered on my face, but he didn't stop. He just kept banging it like he had lost all sense of pain. The counter turned red with blood, and chunks of flesh hung from his forehead, but he was unbothered by it all. I cried as loudly as I could. I just wanted this nightmare to stop. The back office door swung open. Co-workers rushed in, hearing my scream, and suddenly the man let go of me. He sprinted out the door, saying nothing. He took the photograph with him, but left a small, weathered ring box sitting right where the photo had been. My manager, Daryl, came to me, asking what happened, but I couldn't speak. I just pointed to the box. He slowly opened it. Inside was a tarnished wedding ring. Mold covered the edges, and a foul, earthy smell drifted up from it. Tucked beneath the ring was a folded piece of paper. It read, "Come home, Margaret. I've kept everything just as you left it." The cops were called. They dusted the box and took the note. They checked the CCTV footage and saw everything the man had done. That was 3 weeks ago. I hadn't been back to work since, but sometimes, around 10:30 p.m., I'll find strange footprints outside my apartment window, barefoot, muddy. Once I woke up and found a red blanket on my porch, soaked from rain. I'd never owned a red blanket. And the worst part? I keep having dreams. I'm lying in someone's lap, in a house I don't recognize, listening to rain tapping on the tin roof. And I can hear a voice, low and whispering,
"Don't ever leave me again, Margaret. We promised."
But my name is Maria. I know that. I know that. Don't I? I've been delivering pizzas for Tony's for 3 years now, and I thought I'd seen everything. Hoarder houses where you squeeze through towers of newspapers, apartments that smell like something died in the walls. But some deliveries stick with you and change how you see the world. This was one of those nights. The rain was coming down like God had a personal vendetta against my windshield wipers. I could barely see house numbers through the downpour, squinting at each mailbox as I crawled down Sycamore Avenue. The GPS kept insisting I'd arrived, but all I could see were dark houses, stooped trees, and flooded gutters. The house sat wrong on its lot, like it had been dropped there by accident. Paint peeled in long strips, shutters hung crooked, and the lawn begged to be mowed. But the porch light was on, indicating someone who could order pizza at 9 o'clock lived there. I grabbed the order and made a run for it. The floor whined under my feet as I knocked on the door, raking a careless hand through my wet hair.
"Just a second, honey."
The voice was high and sweet, kind of like those lonely aunts in family gatherings who never found their Prince Charming in life. The door opened and my world tilted sideways. Instead of some old cat lady, what smiled at me was this tall, middle-aged woman. She towered over me at 6'2", with broad shoulders that didn't quite fit the pink cardigan she wore. Her red lipstick was bright red and smeared across her face, like she'd applied it in the dark. It was streaking across her cheeks in this grotesque clown smile that promised to haunt my nights for as long as I lived. But it was her face that made my instinct blare. It was hideous, with that square jaw, protruding Adam's apple, and hollow cheeks. The blonde wig sat crooked on her head, revealing patches of short, dark hair underneath. Foundation was caked on thick, but it couldn't hide the 5 o'clock shadow creeping through.
"Oh, wonderful. I was hoping you'd be young."
She leaned on the doorframe, looking me up and down.
"What's your name, sweetheart?"
I held out the pizza boxes, trying to keep my voice steady. 2 mediums with pepperoni for Rebecca Martinez. That'll be $43.50. She smiled, and I swear it was the most disturbing thing I'd ever seen. Her lipstick had gotten on her teeth, making them look bloody in the porch light.
"The name never sounded better before. Come in, it's pouring out there."
I could see past her into the house. The hallway was dark except for a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. The wallpaper peeled in long strips that looked like dead skin, and on the walls, photographs covered every available space. There were different faces of men around my age. "That's okay, I'll just wait right here." I said. Her smile faltered.
Don't be rude, sweetheart. Come get your special tip.
You can just give it to me from here.
I absolutely insist.
She stepped a little closer, and every hair on my body stood up. Really, I'm perfectly fine out here, ma'am. I took a small step back. Just the 4350.
Oh, come now. Don't be rude. Don't you want a fat tip? Isn't that why you drove all the way in this torrential rain?
She clicked her long nails on the door frame, scratching the surface. They were painted the same garish red as her lipstick, but were chipped and dirty. One was missing entirely, revealing a bitten down nail underneath. I wanted to get away ASAP. You know what? Don't worry about the tip. It's all right. Not worry? Her voice dropped completely now, no pretense left. It was deep, masculine, and furious. You think this is funny? You think Rebecca is some kind of joke? She stepped out onto the porch and I saw her shoes. They were men's work boots, size 11 at least, with pink nail polish sloppily painted on the hairy toes. You boys are all the same, she continued, but now it was definitely a man's voice. You see the wig and the lipstick, and you think you can laugh at Rebecca, but Rebecca doesn't like to be laughed at. He lunged forward suddenly, grabbing my arm. You came here, you knocked on Rebecca's door, now you get Rebecca's special tip. Get inside! His fingers caught my jacket sleeve. I jerked away, swinging my elbow back hard. It connected with his ribs, and he grunted, stumbling backward. The other boys fought too at first. He was grinning now, the wig completely askew. But they all thanked Rebecca in the end. They all screamed over and over. I dropped the pizzas and ran like hell, not looking back, not caring about anything except getting into my car. Behind me, I heard heavy footsteps on the porch, then on the gravel driveway. Come back here! Rebecca's not done with you! I fumbled with my keys, hands shaking as rain poured down my back. He was closer, maybe right behind me. I didn't turn. Come on, I grunted. The moment the door opened, I literally threw myself inside, jamming the key into the ignition. The engine turned over, just as a big shoe slammed into my rear window. I threw the car in reverse and floored it, not caring what was behind me, not looking in any direction except forward as I spun the wheel and tore out of that driveway. In my side mirror, just for a second, I saw him standing in the middle of the street, the wig hanging from his hand like a dead animal. I called the police from a diner 3 miles away. The house was empty when they arrived. There weren't any pink cardigans or wigs to testify to the horror. But there was a collection of delivery uniforms from every major chain in the city, clean and pressed, hanging in a neat row like trophies. And in the corner was a tip jar filled with driver's licenses. I quit delivering pizzas the next day and found work at a call center. But sometimes, late at night when it's raining hard, I still hear that voice in my head. You boys always beg for your tip when Rebecca's done with you. I never did get mine, and I'm grateful for that every single day. I'm not the type to post stories on the internet. Working, grocery shopping, and my 2-year-old daughter, Vicky, take up the majority of my life as a 35-year-old single mother. However, I've been thinking about something that happened at the airport last week ever since. It was scary, real-life horror, and I think people should know about it. We were flying from India to Australia to visit my parents. It was a long trip, and I chose a morning flight since Vicky usually naps around that time. The airport was packed. It's the busiest I'd ever seen it. I was navigating the crowd with her stroller while holding onto our passports and flight passes, scanning the gate signals and hoping Vicky wouldn't have a meltdown. Fortunately, she was calm, holding her small plush rabbit and sucking on her dummy. I recall being relieved. Until I became aware of something that disturbed me. A woman wearing what appeared to be high-end clothing was seated near one of the waiting places. She had the appearance of someone who had stepped out of a fashion magazine, complete with pearls, gold earrings, and large sunglasses. She was also looking at Vicky. It seemed as though she was trying to memorize her face. I dismissed it, thinking she found Vicky adorable. Her large eyes and wavy hair draw attention, so people stare a lot. However, I felt watched even after we moved to a different area. In any case, perhaps as a result of the heat and stress, I was beginning to feel a little ill. I made the hasty decision to use the restroom prior to boarding. I parked Vicky right outside the women's washroom, facing the wall, stroller locked, just for a minute. I told her,
Mama will be back in a second.
She nodded like always. The line inside was short. I was gone for approximately 90 seconds, but when I stepped out, the stroller was gone. For a second, I froze. You don't process something like that instantly. I looked left, right, and then ran out screaming.
My baby! Where is my baby?
That's when I saw her. It was the same woman I had seen earlier. She was walking fast toward another terminal, pushing my daughter's stroller. I ran after her and screamed.
Stop! That's my child! What are you doing?
She turned around, calm as anything, and said,
Excuse me? No, this is my daughter. You must be mistaken.
My blood ran cold. Vicky was crying, reaching out for me. I tried grabbing the stroller, but she held on tight and shouted,
Don't touch my child!
Security showed up in seconds. I thought they'd help me. I was frantic, pointing at Vicky, trying to explain.
That's my daughter! She tried to steal her!
But instead of grabbing her or checking IDs, they hesitated. One of the guards looked me up and down. I was wearing a loose t-shirt, joggers, and no makeup, sweaty from running around. The woman looked rich, clean, polished, and calm. She calmly said,
This woman is unstable. She came running up to me, screaming, trying to take my daughter.
And just like that, the security guard started questioning me, asked me if I had any proof the child was mine. I pulled out my passport and Vicky's travel documents, but the guy was barely looking at them. The woman crossed her arms and said,
Anyone could have faked that.
The crowd around us wasn't helping. I heard someone mutter, Uh-oh, looks like a custody battle. And another say,
The rich woman wouldn't lie. Look how calm she is.
I couldn't believe it. It felt like some twisted nightmare. My daughter was crying for me, and yet I was the one being doubted. That's when I snapped. I shouted,
She's not taking my baby! Call the police right now! Do a DNA test! Whatever you want! But call them now!
The word police changed everything. The woman's expression shifted for a second, a flicker of panic. Then suddenly, without warning, she shoved the stroller hard toward me. It smashed into my foot. I screamed as I felt my toenail split, blood soaking through my sandal. She began to run. The guards chased her, but she was fast. She disappeared into the crowd within seconds. The police arrived a few minutes later. I showed them everything: my passport, Vicky's birth certificate, photos, and flight tickets. They believed me immediately. One of the officers took me to sit down while the other pulled up CCTV footage. They saw everything. The footage showed everything from the woman lurking near the restroom to her grabbing the stroller and walking away as if she owned it. Turns out she'd done this before. She had a record. She had been suspected of abducting children at least twice in the past, in different cities, but had successfully escaped both times. She knew how to blend in, how to act calm, and how to manipulate people's perceptions. She knew how to use class and appearance as weapons. The worst part? The cops scolded the security guard, who had doubted me and delayed action due to my appearance. Later, I heard he was fired. Apparently, this wasn't the first time he'd made assumptions based on someone's clothes or skin tone. We eventually boarded our flight. I held Vicky tight the whole way, whispering to her that everything was okay now. But the truth is, it almost wasn't. I keep thinking, what if I hadn't come out of the restroom in time? What if she'd walked fast enough to exit the terminal before anyone noticed? What if the crowd had sided with her completely and restrained me? It's terrifying how quick people judge. All it took was a fancy outfit and fake calmness for a stranger to nearly steal my daughter, and for others to let it happen. I'm sharing this because I want everyone to know kidnappers don't always look scary. They don't wear masks or carry weapons. Sometimes they wear perfume and pearls, and sometimes society helps them just because they look the part. It happened during the summer vacation of my teen years. I was 13 years old back then. My best friend Josh and I planned a trip to the newly opened water park one weekend. We had saved up chore money, packed snacks, and listed every ride we wanted to hit. When we reached the water park, the sun was shining brighter than ever, and the park was filled with people. I could hear kids laughing and water splashing everywhere. The slides looked huge. Music was playing, and the air smelled like sunscreen. We looked at each other, smiled, and ran straight toward the wave pool. After spending some time there, we decided to go for the Vortex, the park's tallest slide. A bright red spiral that twisted 4 stories high. The line was long, and the summer heat was getting ruthless. We were sweating and irritated when we finally made it to the top platform. Just when I thought the wait was finally over, we saw this man. He looked about 40, overweight, wearing an old, faded tank top that clung to his bulging tummy. He stood at the edge of the slide, looking down in fear. His arms were stiff at his sides, and his back was rising and falling with shaky breaths. He was muttering to himself,
"You can do this. Trust me. Just trust me." "What's this guy doing? Is he scared or something?"
Josh whispered, nudging me.
"Just jump, dude!"
I yelled in annoyance. The lifeguard was too busy looking at her phone to notice. The line behind us started backing up. Kids groaned, telling the man to hurry up. Josh and I, being stupid kids, started mocking him and calling him names, but he still didn't move an inch. At that moment, we became quite frustrated and ultimately decided to push the man. He slipped, screaming and throwing his arms in the air. As he vanished down the slide, Josh exploded in laughter, but the scream echoed in my ears. Deep down, I felt that what we did was wrong. Without wasting any more time, we went down right after him. When we got to the bottom, I expected to see the man. However, he wasn't there. Josh and I looked at each other. Maybe he'd gotten out and left quickly or gone to the restroom. We brushed it off. The rest of the day continued to be fun. More water rides, pepperoni pizza, and ice cream. We went all out. Once the sun set and the park was almost closing, we went to the changing room. The washroom was old and had a bleachy smell. The lights overhead flickered. I was halfway into my dry clothes when I heard Josh.
"Yo, what the hell?"
I turned. The man was standing by the exit. He was soaked to the bone. My eyes went straight to his head. Blood was dripping slowly from a gash on his forehead, trailing down his cheek and into his mouth.
"You two think that was funny? Huh?"
Josh and I looked at each other. Neither of us moved.
"You pushed me, mocked me, treated me like some scum. You think that was funny?"
He lunged before I could react. His hand wrapped around my throat, pinning me against the wall. Bringing his face close to mine, he started poking the wound on his forehead with his own finger. I started screaming. He dug into his own flesh, which made him bleed 10 times more. But he was laughing. As if he felt no pain at all. He poked and poked until I could see his white skull underneath the raw flesh. It was horrifying to watch the guy behave like a maniac. His palm was drenched in blood, and he stopped for a second. He looked me in the eye.
"I should break your neck right now,"
he growled.
"But that'd be too easy."
I tried to kick, scratch, anything, but he was too strong. Suddenly, he placed his bloody palm on my forehead and started drawing some symbol with his blood while chanting an unknown language. I kept screaming and pleading for help. Josh bolted. Within a few seconds, park security burst in. It took 3 men to pull the guy off me. He smeared his blood all over my face and neck. The metallic stench burned my nostrils. I fell to the floor, gasping and coughing for air. The man didn't fight them. He just let the security guys drag him while staring at me. But before disappearing from our sight, he screamed one last time.
I'll find you both, and I'll get my revenge! I swear, I'll be back!
The police were called and they informed our parents. I had to give a statement, so did Josh. They told us the guy had a minor concussion from the slide but refused medical help. Apparently, he'd been acting strange at the park entrance earlier. No one pressed charges because technically we had pushed him, which led to his threat. But I know that wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. That night, I didn't sleep. For weeks, I couldn't shower without checking behind the curtain 5 times. Every knock at the door made me jump. I stopped going out for a while. Josh acted tough, like it didn't bother him, but I noticed how he flinched when someone stood behind him in public spaces. It's been 5 years. I haven't seen that man again, but sometimes I get this feeling, like I'm being watched, like someone's behind me at the grocery store, just out of view. I've never stepped foot in any amusement park after that incident. People say I'm paranoid. Maybe I am, but the fear never left. Because I know he meant what he said. Someday he's going to find us again, and this time, I don't think anyone will be there to stop him. I used to think that love meant fights, jealousy, and saying sorry all the time. Looking back, I wasn't in love. Rather, I was stuck, clinging to someone who simply adored my weakness. His name was Gerald. He was my first real love. At first, he was too charming, always sending me sweet texts, but things changed quickly. He became needy and bossy all of a sudden. He started showing up outside of my house at night, sitting across the street in his car. I broke it off when he screamed at me in the school cafeteria, accusing me of cheating in front of everyone. After that, I blocked him and changed my number. He didn't take it well, which brings us to the night at the amusement park. It was a Friday in early summer. My best friend Kathy convinced me to get out and enjoy myself for once. We arrived at around 6 p.m. Funky music surrounded the park. Lights flashed from every corner, followed by people laughing and screaming. It was the kind of evening that made you feel like you would be a kid again for a little while. For the first few hours, I had the best time. We went on roller coasters and laughed until our stomachs hurt. Then we ate ice cream, and Kathy pointed at the Ferris wheel. I was noticing how high it was when I saw a familiar face right under it. Gerald was standing in the queue ahead of us, staring right at me, not blinking, just waiting. Seeing my face drowning in dread, Kathy followed my eyes.
No freaking way. Didn't your mom say he got a warning from the school?
He did.
I said, my voice shaking.
I don't know what he's doing here.
Before we could back away, he walked towards us. His face was pale and his eyes were wide, surrounded by dark circles like he hadn't slept for days. You said you loved me once. That means a part of you still does, whether you admit it or not. Kathy stepped in front of me, telling him to back off, but Gerald wasn't hearing it. He looked past her, straight at me. You think you could just throw me away like trash after everything I did for you?
You did nothing but make my life hell. Leave me alone.
I grabbed Kathy's hand and rushed forward. I decided it was time to stand my ground. No more running away. The Ferris wheel operator looked confused, but we shoved our way into the next available cart before Gerald could stop us. We rose slowly, the cart creaking as the wheel spun higher. I tried to steady my breathing, gripping the metal bar in front of us. Kathy squeezed my shoulder.
You did the right thing. I'm so proud of you. I think he'll leave now.
But she was wrong. Halfway up, maybe 60 feet in the air, our cart suddenly jolted and stopped. We both screamed, and another jolt shook the car. The entire thing rocked violently, like someone had pushed it.
What the hell?
Kathy cried. I looked down, and it was Gerald. He was climbing the metal frame of the Ferris wheel like a rabid monkey, saliva dripping from his mouth, eyes bloodshot with rage. His bare hands gripped the rusted beams so tightly they bled. His shirt was torn, and his hair was wild from the wind. but somehow, impossibly, he was hauling himself up. He was right under our cart.
Take me back, Megan. Take me back. I'll forgive you.
We banged on the sides of the cart, yelling for help. Below, the ride operator finally noticed. I could see people pointing, some running. I could hear the operators panicking about not being able to restart the ride. Gerald was still climbing. He was only inches away now, one hand reaching up toward the bottom of our cart. Blood streamed from his fingers, dripping onto his face, making him look even more haunting.
You're mine, Megan,
he whispered, still smiling.
You owe me.
It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. The way he said it, not angry, not even loud, just certain, like he truly believed I belonged to him.
Stop it, please! Just leave me alone!
His smile changed into a snarl.
So you won't say yes? How about now?
He suddenly let go with one hand. He was hanging from the wheel, clutching the metal rod with only one hand. I screamed, thinking he would fall at any moment.
This is how much I love you. I can risk my life for you. See, I'm letting it go. Do you want me to die for you? Because I will.
Somebody get us down! Do something!
I was screaming and crying, but Gerald enjoyed my misery. He kept shifting from one hand to the other, barely managing to stay on the wheel. It was horrifying to watch his life hanging by a thread. Finally, security reached him. One guard climbed partway up from the other side. Another used a long pole to strike at Gerald's feet. He slipped, dangling for a second, then crashed onto the safety net below. They tackled him and cuffed him. They escorted us off the ride. Kathy was shaking and I couldn't stop crying. I kept looking behind me, expecting him to get up and chase me again. We gave statements. The police charged him with trespassing, harassment, and endangerment. I filed for a restraining order the next day. It was later discovered that Gerald had deliberately sabotaged the ride so he could climb and traumatize us. The look on his face that night wasn't just obsession, it was certainty. He truly believed I was his. I still get nightmares where I see Gerald gripping the metal rod with one hand, dangling from that height. His burning eyes pierce my soul, screaming,
Take me back, Megan. You have to take me back.
This took place on our 8th grade field trip last year. Our school planned this fun and educational trip to a military history museum a few towns over. The museum was built on the spot of a real war battlefield from many years ago. I remember being disinterested in the whole thing. But my friend George and I thought we wouldn't have to go to school that day, but we had no idea it would turn out to be the scariest thing we've ever done. The museum was just another boring place to walk through. There were dusty glass cases with rusted rifles, uniforms behind glass, black and white pictures of soldiers, and the history teacher talking on and on. But sometime in the second hour, George and I saw something strange. A big picture on the far wall that looked a lot more modern than the others. In the text below, it said, Back Cave, Site of Enemy Entombment. The picture showed the rough, dark mouth of a cave with a written signboard, Entry Not Allowed. Our teacher brought it up in passing, saying that during the war, enemy troops had hidden in that cave. It looks like troops on our side locked the door and filled it with poison gas. They all choked to death.
Why would they even keep a cave like that open? Let's go see it. Dude, don't be dumb. It says no entry.
As per the photograph, it seemed like the cave was just rocks and old air. But the inside was pitch black, and the scratched stone near the entry drew me in. I gave George a push.
Let's sneak off. No one will notice.
After 10 minutes, we snuck out the side door while everyone else was watching a dull program about World War I. The cave was behind the museum. It was a long, overgrown road. In the end, we saw it. There was a huge sign stuck on a tree that said in all caps, Restricted Zone, Entry Prohibited. A long metal chain was wrapped around 2 rocks in front of the cave entrance, as if to keep people from going inside. but there were no guards or CCTV around, and the chain was barely blocking our way. We crossed it over. It should not have been that cold in the cave. When we walked inside, the air felt different, like when you walk into a basement after a storm. There was this wet, heavy feeling around. George kept saying that we should go back, but I told him we'd take a quick look, probably 5 to 10 minutes. We turned on the flashlights on our phones and went further. The walls were damp and had moss growing on them. We saw old, broken wooden boxes, what looked like old, worn-out boots, and, I swear, real bones. We weren't sure whether the bones belonged to animals or humans. Suddenly, George pointed at the nearest wall. "Look, over there!" The walls had deep scratches on them. The scratches resembled claw marks created in a state of desperation and pain. Some of them even had old human nails stuck in the stone. Right at that moment, being in that cave felt like a bad idea. My mind kept hinting that we shouldn't be here. George and I exchanged a nervous glance, and we both turned around to leave. We must have taken a step or two when George grabbed my hand tight and whispered, "What was that?" I heard it too, a sloppy, mushy sound of chewing coming from a close distance. With shaking flashlights, we slowly turned in the direction of the noise. There was a person squatting in the corner of the cave about 30 feet away. He had no shoes and wore these torn-out military trousers, revealing his bare body. There were bones protruding from its pale skin, which looked as though it had been melted in certain areas, like he had walked through fire, which made his skin melt. It had something in its mouth. It must have been a bird or a rat, but whatever it was, he was chewing on it, and we could hear the blood and flesh of the animal being crushed by his teeth. We were still in fear. Slowly, the man turned towards us. There was no human quality to the creature's face. Both of its eyes were hazy, and one of them was nearly gone. The jaw became excessively loose. He reminded me of the movie Resident Evil. He stared at us for some time, then gulped the lump of flesh hanging from his mouth. All I remember after that was George screaming and running. I didn't wait either. I just bolted out of the cave. Behind us, I could make out its snarls and gag reflexes as it dragged its limb across the cave floor, as if it were gasping for air. We ran until we saw light. We sped out of the cave, past the chain, and into the sun without even pausing to breathe. George passed out. I gasped and fell to my knees. As soon as we got back to the museum, we were soaked in sweat. Obviously, no one believed us. The teachers yelled at us for going there. The museum workers informed us that we had frightened ourselves in the dark, as they had cleared the cave many years ago. It's impossible for anyone to survive in there after the gas attack, but George and I are sure of what we saw. However, George and I developed our own theory. What if someone actually survived the attack? Hours of struggle and searching for a way out made him somewhat adaptive to the poisonous air. Maybe he didn't die from the effects, but suffered a more horrible fate. He might have changed into something else, something that only appears to be a human. Since then, I've been afraid to stay in the dark. Even at night, when I wake up in my bed and my eyes casually travel to the dark corners, I swear I see him sitting there and smiling. They say be careful at night on lonely, deserted highways, but in reality, danger doesn't always lurk in shady places. Sometimes it takes place in areas where one feels safest. The incident that I'm going to share happened at an airport. It was early in the morning, after a red-eye flight got delayed. I had a long stop in the middle of it. It was very quiet in the airport. There were many people sleeping across rows of chairs or looking through their phones in silence with their headphones on. I chose to clean up in one of the bathrooms for women at the terminal's far end. The bathroom had several stalls for one person and was tucked between two closed gift shops. Only those in dire need or seeking solitude would choose this type of restroom. I sat in the second back stall and looked through my phone for a while, just trying to stay awake. I didn't hear anyone come in. There was no sound of the door opening. I heard not a single footstep. Nothing. However, as soon as I flushed and opened the stall door, I heard someone whisper my name. "Hi, Claire." I froze. I knew that voice. My stomach dropped. He was standing by the sinks. Ryan, my ex. I hadn't seen him in over a year. I hadn't seen him since I left Texas and changed my phone number. The last time I saw him was when I lodged a police report following the threats. I relocated to a different state solely to escape his presence. He was wearing a tan coat, the same one he always wore when he wanted to look harmless. His eyes were sunken. In his left hand, he held a small bouquet of gas station roses. His right hand was shaking slightly. "You never gave me a chance to explain," he said in a calm, soft voice, like nothing ever happened. I didn't say a word. I just stepped toward the door. He moved faster than I expected. In seconds, he blocked the exit. "Don't make this harder than it has to be, Claire." His voice was still low, but the tone had changed, sharper now, like a warning. I said, grinding my teeth,
Get out of my way. Right now.
I tried to shove past him. He shoved me back, not hard, but hard enough. The flowers dropped to the floor. I yelled.
Help! Someone help me!
That's when everything spiraled. He panicked. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a box cutter. At that moment, my first thought was that he was going to kill me, but he didn't come toward me. Instead, he slashed his forearm. The blade sliced clean, and blood poured instantly. I stood there in shock, frozen. I couldn't believe how far he was going just to prove his point. He looked at me with wild, watery eyes and said, "You won't forget me now." Before I could do something, he stepped forward, grabbed my wrist, and smeared his blood all over my face. He even splattered the blood on my hands, screaming, "Look what you made me do! This is all because of you!" The sticky, warm feeling followed by a metallic smell made me nauseous. I tried to pull away, but he held on tight. "You'll remember me," he kept repeating. "You'll always remember me." I fought like hell. I kicked him in the knee, shoved him hard, and ran back toward the stalls. He didn't chase me. He just stood there, laughing through tears, blood dripping from his arm and down his coat. I was screaming for help. The airport security burst in about 30 seconds later. I'd like to think someone had heard me scream, or maybe one of the cameras outside picked up that something was wrong. Either way, I thank God they came when they did. 3 of them tackled him to the floor. The box cutter skidded across the tiles. He didn't fight back, just kept repeating, "She knows now. She knows now. She won't forget me." They called the cops and the paramedics. He was cuffed and pulled out on a stretcher. He constantly smiled at me. I could hardly speak when the police came to interrogate me. They had to hold the paper still for me to sign because my hands were shaking so badly. I waited in the restroom for another hour, reluctant to leave until my next flight. They offered to move me to a safer spot, but I wasn't able to make sense of what they said. It was all too much for me to digest. The trauma of standing helplessly while my psycho ex continued doing horrible things became my forever nightmare. I scrubbed my face for 10 minutes and could still smell the blood. I couldn't get it out of my nose. I couldn't stop seeing his face. I couldn't forget his huge grin, his burning evil eyes, and the way he kept repeating that I would never forget him. He was right, though. I had spent a year rebuilding my life. I thought I was safe for a year. I moved, changed my number, and locked everything down on social media, but somehow he still found me. Somehow he knew I'd be in that terminal, at that gate, at that bathroom. And that's what haunts me the most. How did he know? Police later said they found screen grabs of my online flight confirmation in his apartment. He had been following me online, even under my new usernames. This continued even after I blocked every account that I could think of. For months, he had been tracking me like a hound from hell. I don't feel safe now, even though he's in jail on charges of attack and stalking. I check behind every door whenever I enter a public bathroom. I no longer fly by myself. I always have pepper spray with me, even when I'm just going to my car. I don't know when I'll be free from this trauma. I don't know if I'll ever be comfortable spending alone time in public places. It was 11:47 p.m. when someone knocked on my dorm door. A couple of soft taps, like they didn't want to wake anyone else on the floor. I'd been grinding through another sleepless night of Valorant, trying to forget how much I missed home. 3 weeks into my transfer to state, and I still felt like an outsider here. I paused my game and listened. The knocking came again, patient but insistent. Through the peephole, I saw a guy in a red Pizza Palace uniform holding a thermal bag. Clean cut, maybe in his mid-20s, with this weird smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Pizza delivery," he called out, his voice muffled through the door. "Wrong door, dude. Didn't order anything," I yelled without opening up. Late-night food deliveries to the wrong room constantly happened, but something felt off about this one. His posture was too rigid, like he was muffling a scream inside. "The order's already paid for, cash tip included," he replied. His voice was slightly skewed. "I didn't order pizza," I repeated, louder this time. My heart started doing this weird flutter thing. "You've got the wrong person." The guy pressed his face closer to the door. I could see his eye through the peephole now, wide and unblinking. "Sir, I really need to complete this delivery. It's one of the last. My manager will be pissed if I bring this back. Please, it's paid anyway." "Then eat it and tell him you delivered it," I chuckled, eager to get back to my game. The guy didn't move. He just stood there, swaying slightly like he was deciding something. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped to almost a whisper. I don't want to eat it alone, and I know you don't want to either. Isn't it perfect for your lonely game night? Macaroni and some Coke? Come on, let me in, just for a minute. I promise we'll have fun, Alex." My heart dropped into my stomach. I backed away from the door and triple-checked the deadbolt. Not only did the dude know my name, he knew what I was doing and exactly what I was dreading those days. I was totally suspicious about him being a pizza guy. "You need to leave," I said. The silence was shady for a second. Then I heard him set something down in the hallway. Footsteps moved away from my door, and I heaved a sigh of relief. I crept to the window and peered through the blinds. The guy was standing on the sidewalk below, staring up at my exact window. The pizza bag sat abandoned by a tree. He wasn't leaving. He was just watching. I grabbed my phone and almost called campus security, but what would I tell them? A delivery driver stood outside my building? That wasn't exactly a crime. For 2 hours, he stayed there, pacing in small circles, checking his phone, but always coming back to the same spot where he could see my window. I kept the lights off and watched him through a crack in the blinds until exhaustion finally won, and I passed out. When I woke up the next morning, he was gone. "Dude, you look like hell," my roommate Marcus said when he got back from his morning class. Marcus was one of the few people who'd actually tried to make me feel welcome since I transferred here. I told him everything, the fake delivery, the guy who knew my name and room number, and how he'd stood outside all night. Marcus listened with this expression that got progressively more serious. "The hell, bro? Why didn't you ring me?" he said when I finished, with a pale face. "There was a murder 2 towns over last month. Some psycho dressed as a delivery driver to get into the newbie's apartment. He assaulted, stole stuff, and did some horrible shit. It's been all over the local news." The blood drained from my face. "What?" "Yeah, it was all over Channel 7 and the campus alerts. Guy would show up with fake food orders, claim they were prepaid, and then force his way inside once people opened their doors." Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolling through news articles. "Jesus, Alex, you could have been killed. Look at this shit." The headline made my stomach drop. Pizza delivery killer claims 3rd victim in Millfield. Below was a police sketch that made my hands shake. Those were the exact basic features. Same dead eyes and the same unsettling smile. "We need to check the security cameras," I said. Campus security took one look at the news article and called the police immediately. The cops arrived within an hour. They pulled up the security footage and went quiet when they saw the timestamp. 11:47 p.m., the officer muttered. "Same time as the other attempts." "Other attempts?" I asked. "He's been targeting transfer students specifically, new kids who wouldn't know to be on guard." The officer rewound the footage. "We think he gets their information from registration databases." There he was on screen, clear as day, walking up to the main entrance in a Pizza Palace uniform. But when the officer froze the frame, my blood went cold. His hands were empty, but I saw him carrying something. I whispered. The survivors say all the same thing. They see him holding a delivery bag through the peephole, but the cameras never show it. We've been tracking him for weeks. You did the right thing not opening that door. 3 days later, they caught him trying the same routine at another dorm across town. Marcus showed me the news report. Pizza delivery killer arrested after failed break-in attempt. I was relieved, but I couldn't ease off the terror. Last night, I was walking back from the library when I noticed someone following me at a distance. Just a guy in street clothes, hands in his pockets, matching my pace perfectly. When I turned around to look, he smiled and waved. It was the same smile I'd seen through my peephole.